Bring this meeting to order. Today is August the 18th, the year 2021. Let's all stand for the pledge, please. Lane, will you help us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Roll call, please.
Director Smelser.
Here.
Director Tresson.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Wilkins will not be with us today. And President Cox.
Yes.
We have established a quorum.
It's good to see everybody here for the first time in I don't know how long. How long has it been, LaRue?
A little over a year.
A little over a year. This is great. The atmosphere is great. The boardroom looks absolutely flawless. I'm happy to see everybody here, and let's hope that we can continue meeting like this in person and carry on the business of the agency all in person. So let's go. First item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, now's the time. Anyone?
You can come up to the podium, please. And go ahead and state your name to the cameras.
Great. My name is Pippin Mayer. I did have a couple of quick questions. One was, I was wondering if this meeting was going to be recorded. But I don't know if that's you said a camera, so I assume it is. Great. So I have a few comments that I'll save for the agenda later on this morning. And I do have a few more generic ones. First, just a bookkeeping thing. I would love it if the PDF on the website was actually, you can't highlight it, you can't copy and paste, it's just really hard to work with. And so all the comments I have to retype. That's just kind of a small thing. And it just would make it more easy for the public to comment. Second, I would like to request that future meetings have a virtual option. I'm here today, but I know that with current case rise, it certainly seems like a little bit of a risk, and I certainly want to make sure that you're fair to the public and provide a safe way for everyone to come. But for my public comments, I want to focus on two items. Employee retention, and I'm going to call it methodical sexism. Just almost every woman who has worked for TTSA has been disciplined or demoted or quit or been fired, and I think there's a real problem here. It's possible that TTSA has just hired a whole bunch of really terrible women employees, but it's also possible that this is a culture of systematic sexism. And I just want to give a few examples. So every woman who has taken FMLA has been written up either immediately prior or immediately after taking this legally guaranteed leave. I'd also like to point out that the PERB ruling last spring found a few people, including some board members, had retaliated against or tried to block union activities, but the only one that was demoted was a woman. I also want to point out, how many female operators does the agency have? And the answer is just the one. And how many of those operators have been given walking papers, right? And the answer is also just one. And so, I just want to kind of point out that how many people have dozed off during graveyard, right? I don't know, but I suspect it's more than just one. But only the one has been terminated for it. So I just want to, point out, there just seems like there's some inconsistencies. How many people, there's an employee who drew anti-Semitic symbols, right? And he retired years later on his own. So I think that there's an issue here with consistency. I would say that TTSA's management style is not really management style so much as it doesn't really develop employees and help them be their best selves. I think it seems like it burns them out and it makes them kind of a worst version of themselves. And then the result is that then often they get fired, right? And the reason, there's a reason public agencies are really careful about who they fire. It gets really expensive, right? I can add up all of your legal costs, and I have. And so I think that it's just really, it should be really careful when doing that and thinking about the public and the ratepayer is good. I'll touch on it more later, but I would request the agency consider the financial costs and act in the best interest of the ratepayers. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Seeing none and hearing none. Moving along to the next item, Section 3, Professional Achievements, Awards, and Anniversaries. Good morning, Vicki.
Good morning, President Cox. How are you?
Good.
And good morning, rest of the board members. Vicki Lafrano, Human Resources Administrator. I wanted to acknowledge several employees for their professional achievements as well as work anniversaries. First, we have Tanner McGinnis from the maintenance department. Tanner has achieved his mechanical technologist grade 4 certification. Great job, Tanner. Yay. I also wanted to acknowledge several work anniversaries. They're all 5-year anniversaries. We do have one employee with us here today, and the other two, I understand, are on a roof working today. One of them is Mike Smith. Mike is from the engineering department, and he is our safety officer. Congratulations, Mike. And we also have Paul Schaus's two of his 3 employees, Ryan Schultz and Dean Haynes, also from the maintenance department, the I&E department specifically. And if you would please share the congrats to them for their 5-year anniversaries too, Paul. Thank you. And not on my list here, but I did introduce last month a new employee, Saraja Badal Morris. She is our new CMMS GIS technician in the maintenance department.
Good night, everyone.
And again, just wanted to introduce Saraja and give her an opportunity to introduce herself. And thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the new addition to Truckee Tahoe Sanitation Agency's family. I'm very pleased and happy to have the opportunity to join your team. I came to work as a CMMS and GIS technician under Richard Palante as my supervisor. I have around 12 years of experience in asset management, and before I had the opportunity to work mainly in the airport industry.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for their achievements and their anniversaries. Mike and Tanner, thank you very much for going forth and educating yourself and becoming a more valuable asset to this agency. We really appreciate it. Moving along. The consent agenda. Anyone have anything that they want to add to the consent agenda items 1 through 5? If everyone has had a chance to review these items, and there's anything to be brought before the board's attention, now is the time.
Having reviewed the consent agenda, I'll move for approval.
Go ahead, Pippin.
I have a question about that. I guess I haven't seen any checks or any invoices from Riley Price for the last 6 months. I didn't see one in this one, and I was a little surprised. I was just kind of wondering what that was, where those were. And if that was going to be a big bill, it was going to show up one of these days.
Should I get to address that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not in this one. I do know that we haven't used their services. They may have included it rolled over for next month.
Okay? Any other questions or comments on the financial, or the consent agenda items 1 through 5? Anyone? We have a motion on the floor to approve. Need a second.
A second.
Been moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Blake. All in favor? We have to have a roll call with,
No, sir.
we don't. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered. Moving along to the regular agenda, report from the July 21st, 2021 closed session meeting.
Thank you, President Cox. At the conclusion of the July 2021 board meeting, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from closed session. I just want to inform everybody that there was no action taken during closed session.
Okay, item number 2, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on July the 21st, 2021. If everyone has had a chance to review these minutes and they find them in order, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So move.
Moved by Blake.
I'll second.
Seconded by David. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered. Next item is approval of Resolution 17-2021, approving employee benefit changes and reinstating employee benefits. Exhibit number 3.
Trying to make sure my glasses don't fog up while I talk, you guys, so bear with me, please. So good morning again, President Cox and directors. In 2020, the board adopted Resolution 12-2020, which provided a comprehensive overview of employee benefits and included retiree benefits. Since then, the board has approved resolutions 1-2021, which amended vision benefits, 3-2021, which amended the employer contribution for classic retirement for members hired on or after April 1st, 2021, 8-2021, putting into place the retirement vesting schedule, and 16-2021, which clarified the post-retirement benefits. Resolution 17-2021, which is being presented today, is intended to incorporate into a new resolution all of the information contained in the resolutions just discussed, while also taking into account that CalPERS is changing their medical plans for calendar year 2022. As it relates to medical plans available within the agency's zip code, currently CalPERS offers PERS Care, PERS Choice, and PERS Select. As you are aware, effective January 2021, the agency offered its employees a cost-sharing split for anyone that chose to participate in a plan other than PERS Care. Nearly half of the employees chose to participate. CalPERS announced that effective January 2022, they will no longer offer the PERS Choice medical plan, and that they will change the names of PERS Care and PERS Select to PERS Platinum and PERS Gold, respectively. They also announced rate changes that will affect those plans. The Platinum plan will decrease from Care by 14.85%, and the Gold plan will increase by 23.32% from the Select plan. It was requested that the agency share premium differences based on the current plan and based on the future plan. Can you bring up the, oh, you already did, bring up the spreadsheet. Several assumptions have been made in order to prepare this spreadsheet. In looking at, I did the same thing, so. In looking at the graph as it relates to employee premiums, it is assumed that all staff are enrolled in the plan listed, meaning there's a 2021 PERS Care column, a 2022 PERS Platinum, and a 2022 PERS Gold column. So when we're looking at the employee premiums within those columns, we're assuming that all employees are enrolled in the plan listed. The enrollments are based on the current tier levels of current employee retirement. meaning if it's an employee only or an employee plus one or employee plus two or more. Those, we enrolled them, we assumed that they would be enrolled in the same plans moving forward. Retiree premiums, so now we're on the retiree premium line. For 2021 are based on actual and current retiree enrollment in PERS Care, Choice, and Select plans based on tier level. For 2022, as it relates to the platinum column, a rate reduction of 14.85% was assumed. CalPERS already came out and said that the PERS Care and PERS Platinum plans will be the same thing and announced a 14.85% decrease for Platinum from Care. The difference between the Platinum and Gold premiums, we calculated out a difference between the 2022 PERS Platinum and PERS Gold premiums, and that difference was 34%, and that percentage is assumed as the retiree premium change under the 2022 PERS Gold column. Cost sharing savings for 2021 is based on actual enrollment. Cost sharing savings for 2022 is based on the assumption that the same staff that are currently participating in a cost share option will participate again. Of course, this could change based on actual enrollment, and we won't know that until January of 2022. So the annual cost, the totals down there, the annual cost of benefits line calculates the employee premiums and retiree premiums and reduces the total by the cost sharing savings. If anyone has any questions on that, I can explain. But other than that, management and staff recommend the approval of Resolution 17-2021, approving employee benefit changes and restating employee benefits.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions or comments? Blake?
Your comments. One, it'd be really helpful to have a red line strikeout, to get the resolution without knowing exactly what you changed. Just for future reference, it would be very helpful. Two, the table up there. So it's rare that we see with healthcare a reduction to the agency. So going from what we paid in 2021 for PERS Care to 2022 for PERS Platinum, that bottom line going from 1.9 million down to 1.6 million, an agency expenditure reduction of $300,000 for the exact same plan is great news. That's really good and something certainly to highlight for the agency. I'm going to get a little bit granular here, fellow board members, just because I've been doing this with my agency down the street. I know you guys don't play that role in your agencies as a GM, but we looked at the PERS Gold. There's another, $400,000. Those are real dollars if the agency were to move to the Gold plan. And based on the research we did, the Gold plan, while being the Platinum plan is 50% more than the Gold plan, but doesn't really provide that many more benefits. It's easy and in our case, we're going to our board recommending we go to the Gold and we do some in-house HRA benefits to basically get you to the Gold Plus, which is equal to the Platinum, and you spend more than that bottom line, but way less than the $400,000 to go up to Platinum. There's a lot of intricacies in that in terms of the deductibles, the co-insurance, provider network. There's a lot of education one would want to do with one's staff before doing that. CalPERS came out with these plans kind of last minute. I don't think it's been a rush on our part to kind of educate our staff as we made the move and are proposing the move to Gold. There's no decision yet made at TSD because our board meeting is on Thursday. There's an option for us to, incur further savings without reducing the benefits for the employees. It's a lot of work. I don't want it to overturn the apple cart with staff. There's a lot of things management here is doing. I do want to put a placeholder to say, you know, if we don't do it this year, there's a very short limited time because you'd have to do it before open enrollment. That's when people choose their plans individually. That we consider this seriously for 2023. Again, I'm not proposing a reduction in the benefits for staff. There's a way to go to gold and still provide staff and retirees with the exact same benefits you get under platinum, but you do some self insurance. It's just some of the differences, you know, the deductibles potentially higher in gold than platinum, and so you provide that as a HRA reimbursement, that if they incur those higher deductibles, they get basically at the same place as platinum. You know, the cost of that is fairly negligible. There's some in-house, there's administrative costs, but it's still way less than that premium difference you see up there. So CalPERS, you know, pulled this on the whole state at the last minute. There hasn't been a ton of time to address all these things. They say this is the year one of a 2-year kind of transition, so I don't know what the premiums are going to be like between gold and platinum next year, whether the difference is going to increase even more or perhaps get closer together. But I just think it's something, I mean, these are, you know, we're not talking about $5,000, we're talking $400,000 every year if this stays similar. And so I think it's really worthwhile for the agency to look at that. And again, just I'm looking at staff, no intention of reducing benefits to staff. There's a way to do it. I'm not trying to, you know, provide staff with a lesser plan. I think there's a way to do it, to provide staff with the same plan, same provider network, you know, no reduction in you know, wanting to provide the agency's staff with health care, but cost the agency considerably less money. So, yeah,
what we'll do is we'll monitor it as this plan gets rolled out. We'll track how staff are taking advantage of cost sharing, and then we make some projections for cost for next year, and then we'll bring it back for consideration.
and so, yeah, I mean, so it's
To look how it's going to be integrated and possibly looking into that account set up here. You know, I was just going to ask Blake, I mean, on that account, it's sort of like a health savings account type of situation. And would it be done per employee or as a bulk amount put into an account?
it can be done
Yeah.
different ways.
Okay.
You know, the proposal we've got at TSD, you know, there's a lot of elements. There's a whole issue regarding availability of PERS Gold to retirees that live out of state, and so there's intricacies it requires. I think a lot of outreach work on HR, on the GM, the finance side to look into all this stuff, and then it's really important because this is an important benefit. A lot of people come to work here, they realize how important healthcare as an employee is. It's a retiree benefit as well. And to do that outreach, and it shouldn't be something that's rushed. And so I'm again not encouraging it. You know, if you don't have the time to do it right this year, it's great. Let's celebrate $300,000 in reduced overall health care benefits to the agency. That's a rare win there, but I think there's more prudent fiscal management we can do as we go into 2023, and to start looking at this earlier next year so that we can, staff can flesh this out and possibly save the district some more money so that a benefit like this can be available and honored, through everybody's retirement, not only for existing employees, but future hires as well.
So what Director Blake Pearson is saying is correct. So we can come back and address it, but for clarification, that's not what the discussion is here. It's just adopting the resolution as is. And this table is just for knowledge, so you guys can see what the cost financial impacts are from us just going from CARES to Platinum. And then also looking at the additional step of going from Platinum to Gold. I think the majority of CARES member districts subsidize staff through the Gold plan. So it's just more of a FYI. You have the information. We'll monitor it as it rolls out and then bring it back in the upcoming calendar year for further discussion.
So Blake, what you're recommending is for us not to approve this resolution and to further investigate.
I struggle, Dale, because I see the magnitude of the dollars, but I feel like it would be like I said, we've got $300,000 the agency is saving. That's good. I'm suggesting that we go forward for 2022 with the plan proposed, but that we definitely come back in 2023 and look at a change. So, to clarify that if we're ready, and again, I think part of this is, it's not a problem on staff. CalPERS really sprung this last minute. I don't think they gave folks enough time most agencies enough time to really look at it. Our agency was stuck in kind of a plan that was going to see an increase to go to the new platinum. TTSA is seeing a decrease, so it's positive. So anyway, I will move to adopt resolution 17-2021, but I just want to make it clear to staff that my expectation next year is we look at how we can move to gold.
And if I may add some clarification, the major changes between the current benefits that's described in this resolution, what was adopted in 12/2020, was a lot of the terminology, because we were using employee plus one. They've changed the terminology now to single, two-party, family. They also called out policies and plans that are no longer going to be implemented. They're calling out care, choice, and select. They're going away. They're being converted to platinum gold. So essentially, just to summarize everything, a lot of the revisions in this package, in this resolution, are just making some housekeeping to make sure the terminology is the same. And the biggest one that I think that should be pointed out and discussed further is that in our previous resolution, is to take part into the cost share component. You had to utilize the employee had to utilize their zip code to share in that plan. Because of how this is rolling out, staff in California are either going to go under the platinum or gold plan. So they have the opportunity now to do a cost share from going from platinum to gold. As it goes to the Nevada residents, all they're offering is a platinum plan. So you cannot utilize Nevada zip code to enroll into a gold plan. So one of the biggest changes in this resolution is to maintain the intent of the original resolution, which was to allow staff to partake in the cost share. So what we're asking this resolution is to allow the Nevada residents who want to utilize a gold plan to implement the zip code of the agency, the California zip code. That will allow them to go ahead and partake in the cost share. And I think that's in line with what the intent was of the original resolution. It's good.
Yeah.
And I'll just, a further comment. I think it's great while the district is contracting for platinum to provide that cost share, because I think, and I guess, the word I'd love to get out staff is, you guys should open enroll in gold and accrue those HRA benefits and save the district some money at the same time. It's a great deal. And would you say half of the staff did it last year?
Yeah, I'd say approximately half.
If you educate yourself, you'll see that that's a much better deal, not only for the employee but for the agency as well. So,
and it should be noted when these tables were made, the assumption was we maintained this little transition of half of those that were participating in the cost share also participate in the cost share on the new plan. So if any of that data changes, of course the tables will change as well.
In the last resolution in there is regards to the vesting for post-retirement benefits. So you're getting that savings right up front, but the long-term savings will also be affected with that vesting that we did in that last resolution. So it's not only short-term savings, it's long-term savings. And I think, as Blake said, we ought to investigate that and go for the savings right now, and then look into that once everything stabilizes out and be improved, and go ahead and improve this.
I would agree.
Both short-term and long-term savings here. The long-term savings is not analyzed here, but there is the impact to the district with those post-retirement benefits.
Correct.
For the new employees.
Yeah, this is just a snapshot of it right now.
Absolutely.
But the recommendation is to approve this, adopt this, so we at least roll out to staff. Also be noted that we've had multiple staff meetings and addressed any questions they had. Most of the feedback I received is that they understood it. The thing is, it's a decision being pushed on by CalPERS, not us. So because of that, the feedback is staff is really concerned where they go, and do they still have an option to choose their plans, and that's what we're trying to accommodate.
Next question is to council. You've reviewed this and found everything in proper order here?
Yes, I worked with
Compliance
agency
on all
staff
the-
on putting together both the resolution and the exhibit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the resolution that we have here, would there be a caveat that we readdress this?
I don't think that it goes in the resolution.
No, it's just
It's
It's
just me
just-
kind
it's
of wanting
part of
to
staff
raise
direction.
the specter so
Awareness.
that folks can start to educate themselves, and nobody likes surprises, and so now you've got 9 months, heads up that this is something that we look at, and again, it's not something that should scare anybody. This is a great win-win. This one's a win also, but I think we can have another win-win. But we don't know what CalPERS is going to bring out in 2023, so I caveat that I have no idea how gold and platinum may shift in the future, and but for this year at least, if it stays similar, we should seriously look at moving the contract to the gold plan for 2023.
Okay, Director Smeltzer, any comments?
No, good.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Go ahead, Pippin.
A couple of things. One is I agree with Blake. I think that's well put. And I'll say that I also agree that waiting a year, right, the HRA program here has not gone smoothly. And so even though a bunch of members joined into it, they haven't actually seen that money for a long time. So I think making sure that the kinks are worked out of that before you move to a program that relies more heavily on those sort of like non-direct benefits would be really valuable. I guess I had this one question in section 11, which is on page 56, part B and C, right, where you have the agency pays a fraction of the employee retirement pensions for classic members, and one of them is you pay 100% of the agency part, and the other one is you pay 100% of the agency and the employee part. And I guess I didn't realize that had been changed in April, and I just wanted to, I guess I was asking whether is that new or is that part of the resolution that was adopted this spring?
11C.
11B and C. The two are almost identical. The one is just whether the agency pays 100% of employer and employee.
Would you like clarification on that, President Cox?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't recall the resolution number, but that was the decision where we decided that, to summarize it, new CalPERS employees coming into the agency would be subject to paying their employee share. Currently, the agency pays the employees and employer share for classic employees. Sorry, I used the wrong term on classic employees. Pepper employees are subject to paying their own employee share. And what was happening is, as new employees would come in, they may have been in the CalPERS system for 20 years elsewhere, and they were coming in here, and we were also viewing them as a classic and paying the employees' share there. The resolution or the change was that after a certain date, all employees that join the agency will be subject to paying their own employees' share. I hope I made that clear. I was using the words.
And that was resolution 3-2021.
Thank you very much. Yes. So this resolution and the appendix here is incorporating all those other resolutions, because we were having this resolution shall supersede this resolution. Then before you know it, we're looking at 4 or 5 resolutions to get one plan, so we kind of made it a simplified form for everybody.
Once we adopt it, what's the date that this takes in effect?
Well, this is going to take in effect January 1st, because that takes into consideration the CalPERS plans.
Right.
But the other plans are already in effect because they were already adopted.
Right, the post-retirement vesting, that was done
Yes,
as of
August
what, August?
1st, effective
August
date.
1st. Okay, so any new hire after August 1st would be subject to that,
To
correct?
vesting schedule, correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that clarified it.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a motion to approve Resolution 17-2021. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve Resolution 17-2021.
We already had a motion from Director Tresson.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Tristan, seconded by Director Lewis. No further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered. Next item, number 4, approval of updated maintenance mechanics 1, 2, 3, operator, operation shift supervisor, classification descriptions. That's a mouthful.
Do you mind mailing that, Vicki?
I will.
Thank you.
As a continuous effort to maintain the accuracy of the classification descriptions, there have been amendments to the job descriptions for maintenance mechanic, operator, and operations shift supervisor as follows. The mechanic removes the reference to lead maintenance mechanic and also clarifies the CDL requirements. The operator position clarifies that lab sampling will be performed in accordance with the agency quality assurance manual. And the operations shift supervisor also clarifies that lab sampling will be performed in accordance with the agency quality assurance manual. Management and staff recommend the approval of the updated maintenance mechanic, operator, and operations shift supervisor classification descriptions.
Okay, any discussion? Blake?
That seemed pretty straightforward, pretty minor changes, but no issues here.
Okay. Director Lewis?
It changes, just in the operators and operations is just with the lab testing, is that correct?
Is that, those are the only changes, yeah, making it clear that those lab tests will be performed per the agency quality assurance manual.
And that's currently taking place, correct? And it's not a new issue as far as their job requirements.
Director Smeltzer?
Yeah, a question. Is this a group effort to update this, or is this one person, or what? Who did this?
The agenda item I did, is that what you're asking?
No, the corrections or the changes.
Meaning.
Was it a group effort to do this? And like you,
Manager,
okay,
supervisor.
that's my question.
Okay,
No problem.
all right.
Okay, Mike, anything to add? Okay, any comments from the public?
I do just have one. I would say that, like, for the OITs, I would suggest that there's more explicit language to say something along the lines of under the supervision of the lab director, to be in compliance with what ELAP, the letter ELAP wrote to you guys in January, December, something like that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Do we need to approve this by motion?
We do.
Okay, we need a motion to approve the recommended classification descriptions.
Also moved.
Been moved by Smeltzer,
Second.
seconded by Tristan.
I just got a question here with regards to the lab director. Is he reviewing those samples that come through from the operations?
Yes.
Their data report.
Yes, the
currently.
laboratory director
Okay, so
is in charge of.
it's already being done?
Yes.
Is it in the
This is just clarification in the job description so that it was very clear that any operators doing compliance sampling will follow the quality assurance manual.
as,
And that's where
we're
it's
not in
covered, is in the
violation of
quality assurance
the
manual.
ELAP policy with regards to that. Okay. All right.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask for a motion
Motion
ask for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so ordered. Approval of the award of the SCADA and IT Master Planning Services, item number 5.
Yeah, a couple months ago, President Cox and the board, we had issued an RFP for SCADA and IT Master Planning Services. We received some proposals. Richard and his staff have reviewed them. With that, do you want to provide some additional information, Richard?
Sure. Morning, President Cox, Board of Directors. Richard Palente, Maintenance Manager. So as General Manager Griffin outlined, in May we went out for solicitation of proposals for IT and SCADA Master Plan. When that closed, we had received 3 proposals from various consulting firms. We identified a rating sheet and rating criteria. We then assembled a 5-member panel consisting of the SCADA staff, the supervisor, and myself. We all independently reviewed the proposals and graded them. You can see the weighted grading scores here in the write-up. Upon completion of the review, Jacobs was selected as the most responsive proposal, highest ranked. So before the board for approval is to approve for the general manager to negotiate up to $190,000 with Jacobs to proceed with the IT and SCADA master plan. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. You know, I'm looking at the reports, and then looking at you know, since Corolla's so involved here, and yet they have the highest, you know, almost you know, 80% higher bid than what's here. What were the job? Well, and then it was for 172,000, and then you're willing to go up to, we're putting this at 190. What else are we including that we don't see here?
Jacobs included 3 different recommended but optional workshops, one covering current best practices, a workshop on that. They also included a workshop on implementation, and then also a workshop on just a basic review and documentation prior to moving forward, just make sure they had captured everything. So we included that extra funds, and we just choose to go with those 3 optional workshops is why we went to the 190, up to 190.
Okay.
So,
I mean, it seemed to be, I mean, we're looking, I mean, there's quite a, you know, difference in the bids. And if you read through, you know, from Jacobs, I mean, I basically, you know, read through Jacobs, took the Corolla information, and I didn't see that much difference except for the total cost of the price. And I just look at Corolla being so much more familiar with this operation, having done the master plan here. It just, to me, I mean, almost half the price, and yet are we missing something with regards to Jacobs and the Corolla number?
yeah, we saw that as well as we reviewed it, and we got together after our review and kind of had that question, did we miss something? Because their number of hours were significantly more. But after looking at Hermosa, which is a well-qualified firm, and Jacobs, who has done a lot of work here through the history of the facility, so we felt they were equally up to speed on what we got going on. We looked at the number of hours and compared Jacobs to Hermosa. They were very in line. Looking at Corolla, they've done some similar master plans for agencies I would consider light size. Looked like their dollar amount was in the ballpark of what they had charged their previous customers. So the feeling was that they just allotted a lot more hours that in the long run, with us going with Logically and being able to leverage their IT side of things now, we didn't feel like that was warranted. The additional hours were warranted.
You know, I'm looking at the hours, you know, with Corolla, looking at the hours at Jacobs. I didn't see that. I mean, I saw the difference in the hours, but I didn't see the difference in anything else they were specifically doing in the Corolla bid to the Jacobs bid. Is that correct?
That is correct. All 3 were rated very equal as far as
we're not IT people here.
Yeah.
But, I mean, just you know, from layman's knowledge here, just looking at this thing, you know, and looking at, I mean, it doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence at times on the Corolla end of it with the master plan that we're doing and their cost associated with this proposal as associated with the master plan proposal. I'm hoping we're getting, you know, we're not overdoing it with our master plan proposal like they did with the IT proposal here. I mean, maybe Jake.
Yeah, what do you mean by overdoing it? With
Well,
the proposal?
because of the amount of hours per item that, you know, they had quite a bit more hours per item than the other 2 bidders, quite a bit. And
They were fairly well dialed in on their proposal for the master plan
Okay.
in terms of,
I mean, we did the
Level of
comparison
efforts.
analysis there,
we did.
and they were pretty, I mean, in those bids, they weren't that much different.
No, but I felt like that Perla was on target with respect to assessing their level of effort for the master plan.
Mhm.
That they were not like out of the ballpark, and I would think that their team that they put together, you know, to put these hours together would be, it was some of the same people we met on the master plan, maybe the org assessment, I'm not sure, but master plan for sure. And that team was very competent, and I would think that they would have been able to, you know, look at what was needed. With that being said, though, Cedars from Hill also, or Jacobs came, I believe, and met with us and with their staff, and also learned about what our plan was. So I don't know if it's that they're finding economies that Pearl is not, or I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking at, okay, we've got 2 bids here for outside services here. And having already paid a consultant for the master plan, I mean, are there any duplications that we're getting from the master plan to these individual plans that we have some cost savings that we already did? I mean, it just seems to me we've got a lot of outside work here, and I'm looking at, is there duplication here? I mean, that Corolla bill was what, 800,000 almost?
Right, but I know that the master plan did not do the deep dive in IT SCADA that this proposal is doing.
Correct. I
And it
mean,
wasn't
the side,
part
I
of
mean,
their scope
there's a
to do
lot
that.
of things that the Corolla report, as far as on the IT side, didn't, I mean, just brushed off, I mean, brushed by as far as saying we need more cybersecurity and stuff like that in the Corolla report. This details this IT details the amount of work that we need to have done within the IT section.
Yeah, to clarify, the master plan did not, within their scope, this type of activity or deep dive was not in the master plan scope.
I think what Lane maybe was referencing was the organizational study that Corolla did, which recommended we do an IT master plan. So, I mean, it's an interesting
Right,
point
right.
to bring up. Corolla's been here, they're doing the master plan, they did the organizational study that found that this study should be done. You'd think they would be in prime position to provide the most cost-effective proposal because they've got so much, you know, feet on the ground here, and yet they came in priced really high, which means 2 things. You know, you could read 2 things into it. One, you know, wow, they charged too much, or B, the guys who did it didn't charge enough because they don't know what Corolla knows from all their experience. You know, Jacobs, CH2M Hill, they've been around. They've done these plans before. You know, I think I don't have a good answer for why Corolla would come in so much higher than Jacobs. It is, I think, you bring up really good points, but you got to just scratch your head a little bit. And I don't know.
I mean, we're reading through those reports. I mean, it took a good 3 hours of my time going through this, and I'm not familiar with a lot of this stuff, but it raised those questions as far as I'm thinking while I'm going through this. Corolla's been here, done that, twice the price. What's happening here? That was my question. Because, I mean, we are spending a tremendous amount of money on outside consulting here, and getting the best value for the agency is what we're responsible for. And that raised a lot of questions as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, I think that the big picture is we know what we're looking for. What's the recommendation to do this study through the organizational assessment?
Right.
I don't know if it's fair to start comparing the master plan to this. These are two different scopes of work. And you're right, Corolla, through the conversation with staff, may have more information that they obtained during the organizational assessment. But Jacobs has been with the agency for a very long time. They're very familiar with the plans. So I think both of the organizations are familiar. I think they gave fair proposals. One is deemed that they needed more staff time to it. We've encountered this with construction projects. You'll have one project where one bid comes in at $500,000, the other one comes in at $250,000. As long as the end goal is obtained, which is what the screening and the vetting system was, and they're going to meet our requirements, I think we should, now that we've vetted that they're both fully reliable firms, choose in this scenario Jacobs. So I understand the concerns, I understand the position, but I think that if they've met the requirement, and we've had IT staff go through it, the department go through it, have met with them, feel that they can adequately meet the requirements of the scope, that we should go ahead and proceed to award it with to Jacobs at the lower cost.
Smeltzer?
Yeah, without knowing much about any of these, just reading the resume, I look at my note here for Jacobs and I just said, what? Why not? Yeah, I like them. And I have that's as much expertise as I can put into it is just reading their resume. I just like the work that they did. And that's what I said. That's my note right there.
Okay.
So Dale had a couple of things. On the Jacobs proposal, just verifying, that they gave a bunch of reference projects. Did you guys touch base with the folks that they gave as references to make sure they were, it's one thing for them to put it in there as a reference, it's another thing to follow up and make sure that the folks were satisfied with the end product they received?
We didn't follow up with any references. We like I said, we met with their team lead. Felt confident after talking with them and based on his experience. We ran some of the issues for all those references. One of the people they referenced has been our employee now for going on 2 years almost. So their references are a little out of date, so we chose not to do the references and just rate them based on the 6 criteria that were in there, with cost being 40%, which is hard to overcome when you're that high.
Okay. I would always encourage you follow up on any references that are provided, just to talk to the folks at, Douglas County Public Works or Carson Valley, and some of the ones they gave, just to make sure that they are getting satisfied with it. And I had just kind of a bigger picture question of, I think it was last board meeting we approved the contract with Logically. And so, the agency is changing. We've created this, and it was kind of an epiphany for me, this kind of OT-IT distinction, the SCADA system being kind of operational, OT technology, the, mail server and office kind of stuff being more the IT side of it. This master plan is called a SCADA/IT master plan. And so is it OT and IT, or is it really more focused on the OT side in terms of the work they're doing?
It's going to be both OT and IT side was the focus. If you recall, the process of this started before Bob Gray announced his retirement, which then kind of sparked us into the direction of going Logically. I do see this morphing a little bit since we can leverage our contract with Logically to get some of their security enhancements and et cetera from the IT side of it, which will allow us to focus a little bit more on the OT side with Jacobs, if that's who we end up selecting.
Do we see utilize, they talk about stakeholders, and there's the proposed Jacob team and their interface with TTSA, but Logically is not in that network, but they're going to be our sort of experts on the IT side. And so do we account for Logically's role in this pretty significant effort, in our budget with them? Are they on board for participating in this?
We didn't account for it in the budget. The intent is to definitely include them and include their role in as we move forward. So we will have to work that out with them as we move forward.
Seems like some of this, just like you said, the OT, the IT, some of this stuff could reduce the cost. I just don't want to be having duplication here and being able to get the best value for TTSA here. And on every item that was listed in here that Jacobs was doing, do you see any overlap with the other contract?
Yeah, I do see some overlap, and that's why it's an up to 190. We're kind of taking a.
Well, I mean, they bid
But-
172. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Dale was going the other.
I was going the other way, guys.
It very well could be. I just don't know how much they're going to, once we sit down and negotiate those additional stakeholder meetings with them, and we include logically, we didn't know what those would account
Well, the
to
whole thing is
financially.
when you go above the amount, it's like sort of writing a check for them to go back up to that amount. I'd rather keep it at the 172 that they proposed, and then you come back to the board for any additional changes that you seem that would need to be done for these, because hopefully we can get some. Here we go, value, and between, like Blake said, between Logically and Jacobs here, I have to see some overlap. I would think a little bit, and I just look at getting the value, and I'd approve this, but I'd approve it at what they did the bid for, and you come back to the board for anything above it. That's my.
So the recommended motion, the proposed motion, then is to approve it for the bid amount of 172, give or take, whatever.
Well,
it seems to be.
that's what I'm saying, but
In lieu of
let's-
and then, because if there's any changes, it'll be a reduction because of the overlap of the work. Where previously in the past, we've given ourselves a little bit of buffer in case there's anything here, but the intent is to approve the award to Jacobs,
Right.
enter the negotiations on what the scope is going to be. If there's any additional scope that we thought was credible or would be a benefit, we would add that in. That's why the buffer's in. But what you're saying is you prefer us just to stick to what the scope is right now.
to
as
stick with
identified
the
here.
scope,
Sure.
but also if we have to add something, maybe we can get something taken away with what we already have from Logically. That's what I'm looking at.
And that's usually the process we do internally. We could do it like this, and then if it does exceed it, we can come back to the board next month for any amendments.
I just don't look like. I mean, I hate to say it, but once a consultant sees the 190,
That's
I
what
mean,
it'll be.
that's another $18,000. I mean, $18,000.
No.
And I'd rather them stick to what they bid, and if we can reduce something in there, if you see something you want to add later, you would have the wiggle room in there to get it all done.
Go ahead, Blake.
Just process-wise, I mean, I believe the contract is going to be for 172. We're just kind of giving the agency
Flexibility.
the ability to increase it if things come up later without coming back to the board. But the contract is not going to be for 190. It just gives you guys a cap, but you can't go beyond 190, so it gives you another $18,000 of additional stuff, but the contract itself that would be signed is going to be for the 172. Is that right?
Yeah, they proposed 172, but when we're negotiating, we find out there's other discussions that we think is beneficial that increases the price. The 190 is the cap that we're asking the board to provide us. So it could come back at 175.
Well,
Right.
I just see that. I mean, anybody can take a look at what we're approving here and see. I mean, Jacobs could see the 190. I just say,
I agree with you, Lane.
I just say the 172 we approve here and go from there.
Perfectly fine. And I also wanted to make it clear, we're not going back to the contractor or consultant saying we have approval for 190. Let's see how we can get there. That's something we kind of keep in our own pocket. Yeah, they can research it, but that's not how these negotiations kind of go when we're dealing with consultants. But I understand the point.
I don't like the idea of leaving an $18,000 open checkbook. That's basically what we're doing here.
It's
The way I see
yeah. I don't mind doing it. It's the way we do it at TSD. Most contracts, we do a amount and then we add a not to exceed amount so that we don't hold up if there's something mission critical that happens before a board meeting. We've got that buffer because there's always unforeseen items, but we rely on staff to try and manage that project in as effective way as possible. And we haven't found that contractors go, oh, we saw the 190, let's drum up some stuff, and we don't think you guys are like, well, they gave us 190, let's just hand the money over. If I felt that way, and I appreciate your tight purse strings, I get that. At the same time, we haven't mentioned it, but I mean, the town of Truckee got, the fact that we're doing this master planning, I mean, I want to get beyond the master plan and make sure the town of Truckee got hacked. They got ransomware, they weren't going to pay, they've lost all their data. We can't even communicate with the town of Truckee. It's a nightmare over there. And so, the fact that we're moving and making improvements in our IT is really important this time, and not the planning stuff. That's the first step, but getting beyond it and actually implementing the stuff, and hopefully, getting the hardware, the software, and the staff training to make sure that we aren't the next town of Truckee, because we don't want to be there. We really don't.
But this contract here, I mean, we did logically with the cybersecurity. That was one of the main reasons last month. But this contract here is not, getting into that cybersecurity like the logically is. And to me, I say we approve the contract at 172.
So, Smeltzer, anything to add?
Not really. I think I don't have any problem with the 190, bid and your allowance, and see what they come back with when you're going to negotiate this 172, right?
Yeah, we would negotiate, put in the scope that we need, right? And we weren't going to come back to the board. This approval item is for us to have the staff enter this agreement with Jacobs. So, but there is some disagreement in it. I think what we do is we proceed with the 192 as proposed. Sorry, 172, 638. We'll review the scope. We'll at least get the contract initiated. If there's any future changes that come in that will exceed that, then we'll bring it back to the board and have the conversation.
Is there a time constraint that you can't bring it back to the board? Is that?
Oh no, we can.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, we got plenty of time. I mean, the sooner the better, because it's an IT and SCADA master plan. 1 month's delay wouldn't end everything.
Okay.
But I'd still rather us approve it for at least a 172 change, and then come back if that number need to be.
I got to ask.
You're going to amend your motion?
I got to ask a question here. When it comes to the 190 figure, did staff make that $18,000 recommendation that not to exceed, or how did the 190 come into play here?
Yeah, that was our recommendation. Just kind of spitballing 3 additional workshops, figuring they'd come in somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay. We got 2 directors that want to proceed not to exceed 190.
What was the motion? Do we have a motion?
We don't have a motion. We have a recommendation from staff to approve the general manager to execute the agreement up to 190.
Then I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to Jacobs for the 172, whatever the
As
change.
proposed.
As proposed.
Okay, need a second.
Staff's good with that. I'll second that. Let's move this forward.
Okay, thank you, Blake. Okay, we got a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor? Go ahead, I'm sorry, Pippin.
No worries. I had a couple things. One is I really appreciate being care about the money. 2 is I've tried to work with the town of Truckee recently, and clearly, IT security should be really high priority because it's a fiasco. It's sorry, don't put it in your permit application, right? So I think that the faster you can make this happen, by all means. And I'm not sure $18,000 is. It may well be cheap insurance at this point. If you could get something tangible for it and be more secure, it would totally be worth it from my perspective. Second, I had a process question. So TTSA was created uniquely, right, in the California CFR. I guess I'm looking at Richard here. And Article 126, Section 21.615 talks about specifically how you approve contracts, and that those contracts are, and I'm a paraphraser, or I can read it, but right. Any agency expenditure exceeding $5,000, it shall be contracted and let to lowest responsible bidder after notice, right? So I'm a little concerned about this process where you have all these percentages and grading, which isn't really consistent with what California CFR, and you're fine here because you're going with the cheapest bidder. But essentially, the way the process, as I understand it, is supposed to work is you're supposed to have all responsible bidders and then go with the cheapest one. So I guess that.
Well, it's not the cheapest one. Jacobs is the most.
The middle one.
The middle one, which we felt was most qualified.
My understanding is that the area you're reading from is for construction projects
Yeah.
that are associated with the facilities, professional service agreements. That I assume this would be under a professional services agreement contract. Give public agency the authority to award to the most qualified, not the lowest bidder.
Yeah, would you prefer to have Dick Shanahan address this, President Cox? Clarification? Because I've read this also.
Just for clarification, Council?
What Director Tresson just outlined is correct. That's the right answer, I believe. What the audience member is referring to is the agency's public bidding statute that applies to public works, construction, installation type projects, which are indeed subject to a lowest responsive bidder obligation. In contrast, when you're contracting services, you've got more discretion to consider non-price factors, as staff is doing here.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. And we are going to approve Jacobs Engineering Group at the bid price of $172,000.
Bid price at $172,638.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the pretreatment program review services.
After reading those, you don't need the NyQuil.
So at the same time we issued RFPs for the IT and SCADA master plan, we also issued an RFP for the pretreatment program review services. Likewise, we received a couple of proposals, and with that, Jay Parker will provide some further information.
Good morning, directors. Good to see everybody in person again. Along the same lines as Richard, in May we went out for RFP for pretreatment program review services. We received two proposals, one from Corollo in the amount of $174,600, second from EEC Environmental for $414,346. We used the same criteria selection process that Richard did for the IT SCADA master plan. Reviewed the proposals against the sum of all the criteria listed there. The lowest proposal is coincident with the recommendation based on that review and those criteria. Corollo's proposal was put together very well. Lowest proposal, $174,600, is less than the budget amount of $175,000. The exact fee will be dependent on the finalized scope of work. And attached are the two proposals. Management and staff recommend approval for staff to award the pretreatment program review services to Corollo Engineers and authorize the general manager in agreement to negotiate an agreement up to $175,000.
I just read,
Here we go again.
Yeah, I'm reading this thing, and like Corollo seeing a 175 estimated value, and then coming in at 174.6.
Yeah.
But then the other one is out of the ballpark. Seeing Corollo here and seeing Corollo there, it does not make sense. But this proposal that they did looks good.
Blake?
Well, when you guys brought the RFP to us, my comments at that point were it seemed to me to be the scope of work seemed excessively detailed for a pretreatment. I don't understand the details of the pretreatment. I've struggled to find in here the requirements that we're trying to comply with that require a $175,000 pretreatment program for an agency that it's just a bunch of homes out there. There is a hospital, some breweries, but we don't have. I look at the comparisons; are all called industrial pretreatment. It says right in there we have zero, SIUs in our agency, and it just seems like if we need to buff up our pre-treatment program, and I'm just throwing darts at the wall, in my mind, it seemed like about a $20,000 scope to possibly buff it up and get us there. It seemed like 175. Just seems excessive. You know, they talk about we have no industrial users. You know, there's been no indication of notable toxic interference based on data analysis. Consistently produce high quality effluent sludges. I'm not seeing the regulatory need, the actual operational concern. I assume we have to have a pre-treatment program, but I'm concerned that, you know, we've created such a thorough RFP that we're going to end up with them generating work that's going to come back, and, you know, we're going to need another FTE to implement this when we really have just homes. And, you know, you go to later in the agenda where we talk about fats, oil, and grease, probably one of our biggest kind of possible pre-treatment concerns, and the comment there is in the SSMP, you know, the agency doesn't have direct relationships with the discharger. Controls of fats, oils, and grease are dependent upon the member agencies. And yet, so I'm confused by the magnitude of the scope, and I haven't found the real needs for something of this level. I don't mind us getting some outside help, tightening up our program, but I'm concerned about A, the cost of this, and B, the product and the future ongoing costs of implementing something that may be above and beyond really our needs. You know, I want to comply with the regulations, yes, but that's about it. You know, unless there's something else going on that's.
Yeah, can I address?
Sure.
Reeling back in time, basically the bottom line here is that we lack confidence in the treatment program that was developed plus or minus 5. Well, now it's getting on to 6-7 years ago. We hired a consultant with what we back at that point that we subsequently learned was an inadequate scope of work, because what we walked away with was a program with some major elements that were missing from our pre-treatment program. And we kind of hobbled through and got pieces and parts and things together, and worked with legal counsel to assemble a program, but we ended up learning that it was an inadequate effort because we were missing these major elements. So we've always been left with this feeling that our program is not up to snuff. And true, we don't have any SIUs right now, but we want to prepare for the eventuality that we will. At some point, we would have an SIU, whether that be dialysis, whether it be increasing regulations on our landfill leachate, whether it's a new process, new industry that moves in that adds a harmful substance. We want to make sure we have the tools in place to address those when they happen, in a proactive process instead of a reactive process. So, in a nutshell, we're trying to get to a point where we have full confidence that we have the backbone we need, and that we're hitting all the major elements that EPA requires, so that we're prepared.
Are you saying if the EPA came at us right now, we wouldn't be prepared?
Well, we're prepared in that we've hobbled together all the major elements that we need, that we think we need, but we kind of did it without, our consultant had already disappeared. So we want to make sure that what we have in place meets all the current, code requirements and regulations. I would hope that if EPA came by today, that everything would look good. But we want to have that confidence that, we've had a pre-treatment industry expert, go through our our entire program and make sure that there aren't any holes that need to be plugged.
I got to ask you, Jade, is any of this revolving around the application of a dialysis situation at the hospital that we were unable to accommodate?
The dialysis center, I think, is what propagated the effort 6-7 years
That
ago.
we're on right now?
So yeah, that we're on right now. So that was actually precedent, that's the right word, prior in time to the 2014-2015 effort. The dialysis was earlier than that. So no, it's not, it hasn't come up again, but that's an example of something where we had to scramble, when that came up, for lack of a better term, to make sure that the pre-treatment program was back then was done correctly, but because it was a scramble, it was an inadequate scope for our consultant, and so we ended up with this program that we lack confidence in.
So I guess I'm just still struggling with, so what is this program going to do? So once this is completed and the next dialysis developer comes in, what is it going to have that we don't have now that's going to really make a big difference?
So, well, for example, I'll just start with the very first step, which is the application. The prior consultant did not provide any kind of templates for applications for an industrial user to fill out. We have developed that in-house. That we would have confidence that that application isn't missing any major program elements. The next step is the review of that that application against local limits, for example. Local limits, our prior consultant developed local limits, and we don't have confidence in that analysis because everything seems so rushed, and plus what regulations have changed in the last 7 years. So each step as you go along the way, there are these things. Enforcement response plan. Our consultant didn't develop an enforcement response plan for us. What happens when that industry starts discharging something that's a violation? What are our next actions to take against this industrial user? We have to develop and hobble something together ourselves.
How unique is this for TTSA? And again, this is something that feels like, couldn't you just give South Placer MUD a call and say, hey, you guys have a good pre-treatment program? Is it really super unique to the TTSA environment? I'm just struggling with the $170,000 to make a permit. What are you going to discharge? I think there was $20,000 in this permit thing where it says, we don't even have any permits right now.
So we did reach out, and that's how we were able to cobble together things, is to reach out to the other entities, other agencies, et cetera. What permit are you using? What enforcement plan are you using? And so we threw that together. So yeah, we've gone through that step, but yet we haven't had this industry leader, somebody who knows pre-treatment, to go through and go, yeah, you guys are good, or no, this needs work, and here are the suggested revisions. And the way that the scope of work will be written is, notwithstanding the comment that you made, Lane, that it's up to including that amount, but the scope does include, okay, here are the proposed revisions to your ordinance, here are the proposed revisions to your application, permits, et cetera. So and if we don't have to make any revisions, then we're spending less money.
So the 174 is a baseline in which these additional things or the 174 is sort of the high point, and there may be sections that you're not going to, you might not need all 174.
Yeah.
So once they look into our environment, you know, they could.
Again, it's Corolla. They know.
Right. I know they know
us.
what we got. I mean, in the whole time that I've been here, the only issue we ever had was with the dialysis application for that private use, or in coordination with the hospital. I don't know what it was, but I don't seem to see. I don't remember any other.
Well, you do have other like distilleries coming in, right? So now, I think everybody's automatically assuming it's going to be a significant industrial user that this is referring to.
Yeah.
It's also addressing the intermediate steps to review all users that are coming in, to classify them, and then once they're classified, determine how we're going to contend with them. We're going to make sure that when someone wants to discharge a certain constituent, are we worried about that constituent, right? Is it a high concentration and a low flow, or a high flow with a low concentration? How is that going to affect the treatment plant? And this isn't the cost that goes through every single user as they come in. What we're doing is just bringing the program up, getting to where we're confident that we're going through a vetting system to make sure that things are applicable. We're making sure that the treatment plant can handle it. And once this program is set, now we're just maintaining it, right? So as long as there aren't major overhauls in the program and in the laws, then we should be pretty up to speed. And it's just bringing us up to where we really should be.
Seems to me every applicant, every applicant coming in for, I guess breweries, whatever, would have to, they gotta prove their discharge to us what it is, correct? And then you guys make an analysis that, okay, there is no impact, it's okay, or how are you going to modify that discharge to meet the requirements? Is that correct?
That's correct, but it's, we don't suggest how they modify it. We basically say you have to modify.
You have to meet these requirements.
But this is providing that backbone framework that'll, sets the process, and that, we have confidence in that this backbone is correct and certified.
I'm sort of like, I'm with you, Blake, as far as, our environment here being so much simpler than, some of these other ones. And I can see, that other group that made the bid, at 3 times the cost of this one is probably just associated with cities and stuff like that. And that's their usual, where they have to go out and evaluate every discharge user. But if you're looking for a template here to, to operate, compliance is the main thing here. If you need what you need for compliance, that's, and hopefully it would be less than the 174. But if that's what you see, if that's what they proposed here, like you said, it's, who knows? South Tahoe may have another, have a nice template to work off of. I hate to create a special wheel for this agency that's already been created from another agency.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if you were to, assemble a car where you're going to take one wheel from South Tahoe PD and one wheel from San Diego and one wheel from Sacramento and one from the East Coast. Is your car?
I'm not opposed to. Sorry, Jay. I'm not opposed to using a consultant. It's just the sticker shock that's got me. It surprises me for something as seemingly kind of generic and as easy as our agency is, that I just am surprised at the price tag they're putting on it. And I recognize that it's a third or less than, way less than a half of EEC. And I've worked with John Schaefer with EEC before, and I respect him. So it's very confusing. Still confuses me, and I'm just struggling with the price tag. Both from the kind of the true workload required and and the necessity. I understand it's great. You want to have this really boilerplate thing that's really super solid. Priority wise, it doesn't seem like it's a huge priority because our current system, although it's cobbled together, seems to work fairly well. It sounds like we had one issue 7 years ago. I'm not hearing a huge needs argument for it, and then with the price tag, it's tough.
I look at, we got two different plans here. We're gonna spend $350. We just saved 320. We're still negative, you know. I mean, I just sort of look at the whole, you know, pictures of what we're spending here and looking at, like you say, I mean, you know, if this has to be done for compliance, I say do whatever needs to be done for compliance. Beyond that, because if we're out of compliance, it costs us a fortune to come back if we have a violation to come back and rectify it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're at a point where you don't know if you're in compliance until they do the work.
There you go.
Well, the question I have is, you know, we're talking about industrial stuff in the system, you know, legally. So, in my memory, we've had a couple of dumps around different places that have been dumped illegally, and why couldn't they just put it into the sewer system and we'd have to deal with it this end? Would this study cover us somewhat for, you know, I mean, and
yeah, so the enforcement response plan, for example, would set a procedure to handle people that are not complying with our ordinances and illegal discharges.
right, because I can think that I can't remember what it was, toluene or some ethyl methyl bad stuff that was dumped in the creek in Kings Beach, and what's the difference of pouring it down the sewer? And it went into the lake. Another occasion that they had some kind of a spill up at Alpine, and Bear Creek turned fluorescent green, and you know nobody copped to it. They went down into the parking lot and ran underneath the ground into the creek. Fluorescent green. It was just unbelievable. So shit happens.
Board, if we could go back and discuss with Corlo, address the scope a little further, get more definition to the amount of cost. Maybe there'll be a reduction in the cost. Give some clarification on the cost per scope, and return to the next board meeting if that's something that you guys would prefer instead of addressing it right now, concluding adoption or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd look to Jay. You've been obviously the most involved in this. Is there the opportunity to, you know, is this really
Necessary.
the scope that needs to be done, or you know, if it had been written, review and update the district's pre-treatment program, you know, and that's the way it was written. Review and update our existing pre-treatment program. I'm thinking this, and again, I don't know if I'm right. It might come in at $174,000 to do that, but is there a way to possibly, you know, I don't know, scale this perhaps down a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, they had some options in there that we asked them to take out in terms of we thought they were unnecessary. But yeah, we could ask if there's something else that we can, you know, remove to, you know, further reduce the scope. I think, you know, again, I go back to the point where they need to review the program to know how much work that goes into it, and they assume the worst, right? So that if they review something and go, yeah, the City of San Diego permit template you've been using or whatever, it looks great, then we're good. We don't need to spend money on that task. But yeah, we could look for, during the negotiations, we can look for opportunities for them to reduce further, and then we can bring it back to the board for review.
It sounds like staff's recommendation. They want a full, thorough vetting of our program, and that's understandably so. And to do that is going to cost. It's just so what I'm reading is it's not that we don't want to proceed with it. We just want to make sure that there's a nice balance between the two. So I think with that, we should come back next month, Jay. Have the discussion with Corollo, not have with the EEC simply because of the difference in the cost there, and see where there are places where we may not need to have that fine detail examination of it. So is that where we can maybe fill in and provide that service, and then come back next month?
I got a question for council. Can we come back next month without having to rebid it?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so we can come back to Corolla with their one, whatever, without having to go back out to rebid. This is just
Negotiating.
in energy, just a negotiating spot at this point.
Yes, you may.
Okay, all right.
So with that, we'll table the action and come back next month.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Let's move on to the approval of the 2021 Sewer System Management Plan Audit. This is item number 7.
Jay, do you mind addressing that as well, please?
So, every 2 years, the agency must perform an audit of its SSMP program. The audit must be conducted basically to the appropriate size of the system, and then, or that's appropriate for the size of the system, and then based on the number of overflows. Our system is fairly small. We've had no overflows historically. Audits must be performed every 2 years. I think many of you were on the board from 2 years ago. You probably remember this. The audit has to focus on these items that are listed. There are 11 elements that the audit goes through, and the audit is attached. And management staff recommend approval of the 2021 Sewer System Management Plan audit.
It's, every 2 years we have to comply with the state. Do we ever get any additional information back from the state as far as when we submit that audit? I mean, it seems, we do it every 2 years. I mean, it's a state requirement.
Yeah,
but do anybody, I've said this, we read it.
We've never had the state come back to us with any SSMP issues or problems.
Okay. Yeah, we do it because we have to do it, and we have to be in compliance here. I'm not saying, there is no fudging on this one. So
I thought it was it's a good template you have there. It's a good, review of all the stuff. It's great to see everything seems to be working, and so I shared this with our staff as a template for us to possibly use when we do our next audit. And so, that was a nice job. Yeah, it is, and good for you for staying up on it because it'd be easy to see these things slide also. So, good for keeping us in compliance there.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt the. Is it an adoption?
Okay, before that, any comments there, Dave?
No, I'm good.
All right. So
Lane?
You do this completely in-house, correct?
Yeah.
I just want to comment that, a lot of agencies do this outside the house, and I appreciate doing it in-house and saving our customers money. So, good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, hearing none. We need a motion to approve.
I'll recommend that we
sewer audit.
approve the 2021 SSMP audit.
I'll second it.
And we got a motion from Blake to move to approve, second by David. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, great job. We used to pay a number of years ago to have that done, so.
Okay, moving along.
For item B8 is the approval to solicit bids for the 2021 chlorine scrubber improvements project. With that, Dave Parker can provide further information, please.
The agency uses a scrubber system as one of its safeguards for its chlorine facility. And the scrubber's purpose is in the event of a major leak or even minor one, the scrubber will treat that release. The scrubber was commissioned in 1997, and the scrubber is now nearing the end of its useful life. So this work is for a construction contractor to remove the existing scrubber using a temporary scrubber outside for the interim during the construction and install the new scrubber. The engineer's estimate for the project is $980,000, and the original budget for the project is $1 million. Attached are the drawings for the contract drawings, and at this step, management and staff recommend approval to solicit bids for the 2021 chlorine scrubber improvements project.
I got a question. When I'm reading this through, I'm looking, if there was a new plant built, if this was brand new, would you use, are any plants using UV disinfection? Is that the future technology here?
Yeah, a lot of plants are using UV technology.
But it's a huge cost for us to transfer over, for chlorine. I mean, you're
Yes.
looking.
So if you look at the life cycle costs, if you were just look at purely at economics, part of everything else aside at this point, you have a facility that's already built, already constructed, already in operation, being maintained.
Right.
Our costs for that to maintain the existing system are basically, I just said it, to maintain the existing system.
Right.
This is the largest cost you're going to have in terms of maintaining the system is replacing a scrubber, that'll be every 20, 25 years. Compared to a UV system in which you need major capital infrastructure, you need new power, new electrical control building, basically.
Right.
You need standby storage in case your UV system goes down. You need additional supplemental disinfection process for things like to water in the plant. Not to mention all the power costs, large power costs from the UV system, large maintenance costs, et cetera. So your life cycle costs on the UV side is very large.
But what's the
significant.
life expectancy as far as that unit long term?
Well, so the lamps need to be replaced fairly frequently, and that's one of the costs. But in terms of overall facility, you could probably go, just use the typical 20 to 25 years. So if you compare apples to apples on cost only, you have a relatively low, very low continued operation cost of chlorine and a very high relative cost for UV.
I was just looking at it. Is it if we switched, would it be a $10, $15 million project?
Easily.
Oh, easily. Okay.
So that's cost.
Right.
Take away costs, and you look at and just other factors. So you have environmental factors with respect to using chlorine. You have, do we want to have a chlorine in our community? Risk to employees, risk to neighbors. You have other factors like we have to maintain a higher level of regulatory documentation for chlorine. All these other non-economic factors, which if costs were equal, you would go, yeah, UV is a no-brainer.
Right.
So what the board would need to evaluate in that decision is how much is cost a factor here versus all these other non-economic factors which would point the other direction.
Okay.
One cost would point one way, non-economic would point another way.
Okay.
And that will come to light in the Corolla master plan as they're looking at, future, long range.
They're looking at projects for alternative disinfectants, but in terms of they're not going to be saying you shall go.
No, but they would provide that kind of analysis of, the district, has to continue to meet its disinfection requirements and kind of lay out those life cycle costs as it get that.
So it's the master plan is not an alternative disinfection study, which would be kind of what you're referring to. This is more of like, okay, here's long list of projects, and one of the projects that the agency may consider is this project.
I think you'd probably look, I mean, at the next planned expansion type of deal where you finance a huge project, I mean, and then that, like you said, you gotta weigh in all the different costs associated environmentally, it all goes, it's one massive project. This is right at this point right now, looking at $1 million for another 20 years. We're not going to be in a planned expansion by our flow data for a while. So,
but I guess the question is once we make this $1 million investment and we get another 20 years out of it, it would be silly to say next year do this alternatives analysis on disinfection. Do we want to go UV? It would be silly to have just put $1 million down. And so, do you guys foresee bringing this disinfection decision point forward in the near future? And because it would make sense to cross that path before we make this investment.
Right. So we had a very similar conversation about this when we brought this up, and the concern is the same. Conversations are pretty much very similar to what we're having now.
Okay.
We're looking at a high capital investment to make sure that's something we may not be utilizing in the near future. But I think I'm kind of summarizing the discussion here. And during that time, during that conversation, what I recall was that the current system we have now is failing. So even if we decided to install UV tomorrow, there's a process to get to that stage. So we have to install this immediately. Right? And then subsequently, even if we were to proceed to go with the UV, Mike, I think you stated that we could also keep this in as a process. So it's not like it would become obsolete and we would lose our investment. So we understand that there's a lot of capital we need to invest, but because of that current situation right now, we do have to implement it, knowing full and well that if we do change course and go to UV, we can still utilize it to where it's not a complete loss from a financial standpoint. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that is correct. It may be at a smaller scale, but we would still, like Jay had alluded to, that you'd still need disinfection for 2 water. And a lot of times with UV systems, my understanding is there is some disinfection after the UV process to ensure the total kill for regrowth and stuff. So it might be on a smaller scale, but we could continue to use gaseous chlorine in the building in the future. So this investment would not be lost.
And then also, I want to bring up the point that even if, supposing you approve this today and then tomorrow you decided, okay, we want to go to UV, that process to go to UV is a multi-year process. Right?
Well,
You've got to spend almost 1 year collecting data at first.
and it's not going to get through the State Water Resource Control Board as far as a new application immediately either.
And I have to say that semantically, the difference between the current system is reaching the end of its engineered life and it's failing is a big difference. There's a lot of things. Engineered life is defined as what you can go for a lot longer. We've got lots of stuff in our facility that we've maintained really well, and they're way past their engineered life. But if it's failing, that's a different thing. It's not. This isn't It's proactive, but it's. This is not a system you want to wait till it fails to replace.
So what LeBrew's referring to, we fixed. We had a contractor come in and fix it. But the reason why we had to come in and fix it is because it's at the end of its useful life.
Right.
So those kind of problems could come up again. The more you stretch something, this from beyond its useful life, the more maintenance you have to do.
And this is a health and safety item. This is not something that you can live with in a non-functional way. Right. Have you guys? Have we ever had to activate the scrubber? Does that?
Yeah, it comes on automatically.
Okay.
When we have little. Michael, do you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, anytime you have any type of a residual that goes over up to 1 part in the room, and then we also do testing. We also have a monthly testing where we are actually turning the scrubber on to make sure that the pumps are working, fans working, making sure that we've got our airflow through the system that we have to have and maintain. So it is started at least monthly, if not a little bit more. So.
Smeltzer?
Just a question. I think I missed it. There is going to be a backup system while they're under construction?
Yeah, so the contractor, under the contract documents, the specifications require them to install a temporary
That's all it's with.
scrubber system outside the building in its own, area to support the need
As
to
needed.
have a
Yeah.
scrubber while they do the swap out of the old.
That was my question.
Okay,
You
The,
go up from the public here.
go ahead, public.
Great, thanks, Dale. A couple of random comments on this. I'm all in favor of safety equipment, right? Like, and I live in the community, so I really care, and I really like, right, the chlorine to be under control. I really appreciate all the UV discussion. I know I've been hammering on it, and I really appreciate that that got brought up. I assume it got brought up separately, but, I guess I just like you guys, was kind of like, there's $1 million worth of stranded capital if you switch to UV, and was a little worried about that. I will say that I do suggest that, if the current system is failing, as a member of the public, I'd really like to know about it. Right? So I think, just throwing that out there. And finally, I will just, while I'm advocating for UV, I will say that, there's a reason a bunch of other agencies go to it, right? TTSA is sort of uniquely well-suited, super low turbidity and effluent, which is one of the hang-ups with UV. And also there's a cost savings, you wouldn't have to do as much confined space and hazmat suit training, there's legal savings there. Maybe that was too soon. Okay.
Okay.
Another question.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I'm Sarah Coolidge, Tahoe Vista resident. I'm very appreciative as well of you talking about the UV possibilities. And what I would like to say is that you, as a board of directors, are empowered to direct your staff to investigate that and not wait for them to bring it to you. Because the longer that you just kind of leave it as a maybe someday thing, we'll talk about it, the longer it will take to actually happen. You guys can ask for it.
Thank you. Okay. We have a recommendation for staff to solicit bids for the 2021 chlorine scrubber improvement project.
I'll make the motion that we approve $980,000
Solicit bids.
solicited bid for the chlorine scrubber.
Motion on the floor by Lewis. Need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Treeson. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So ordered. Let's talk about the approval of the agency fixed asset policy. This is item number 9.
Crystal, do you mind providing some information on this, please?
Not at all. Good morning. I guess it's still morning, and it is nice to finally meet everybody in person. Being my third board meeting, the first two were on Zoom. We have put together a fixed asset policy for the TTS agency. The current one is just in the financial audit with the accounting policies note where we have recapitalized fixed assets over the amount of 1,000 with a useful life of over a year. Reached out recently to the other member districts and some peers on their current fixed asset policies because it's been a while since this one has been updated. We don't have an actual fixed asset policy. We just have the accounting policies that we follow within the note for the audited financials. Recommending that we update our policy or update our value to items in excess of 15,000 with an estimated useful life of over 1 year. And then I've also attached the written policy. Do you want to just summarize that? I don't know if you guys want me to read it to you.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, basically any items over 15,000 with a useful life of more than 1 year, following GASB 34, any updates to GASB 34. Also adding that any purchases or projects that extend the useful life of an existing asset and meet that requirement as well be depreciated over the the useful life years within GASB 30. Any questions?
Any questions there, Blake?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by Treson, seconded by Smeltzer. No further discussion.
It was Lewis who made the motion.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's talk about the Placer County Grand Jury report.
Thank you, President
Number
Cox.
10.
As you can see, the Placer County Grand Jury provided a report to President Cox. I've attached that in the packets. In summary, what they've done is they kind of did an audit, and they said that in accordance with AB 2257, a special district must provide a prominent direct link from the homepage of its webpage to either one, the current agenda, or two, to an integrated agenda management platform. When we reviewed that, we found that TTSA was in compliance to the integrated agenda management platform, meaning it didn't have its predominant link to the homepage. However, after discussion with President Cox, the conclusion was that if Placer County feels that we should have a direct link from our homepage to our agenda, then we simply do so. It really wasn't that complicated or hard to do. So what we've done here, as you can see on the screens, if I bring your attention to that real quick, we now have a link, which I've also attached here on the packets where I've identified in red, but you can see our current web page now where we have a link there. So in lieu of having a back and forth discussion whether we agree or disagree with Placer County's findings, I just found it was just more reasonable to accommodate the request and have a link there. So with that, there is a response that is required to be provided to the grand jury, and that's attached here, and it essentially states that they have in their report they have a recommendation, listed recommendation, and a finding, and that's what's referenced in the report. And what we've done is we filled out the form to essentially say we agree with your finding that we didn't have a direct link on the front page, and that we will do the recommendation, which is to put a direct link to our agenda on the home page. So that's what the report form is here. So the action item is to approve the agency response to the Placer County jury report. As you can see in the packet, it's that one-page document response to the grand jury report form.
Blake, any comment?
Just that, since I think even the brief time I've been on the board, I've seen great improvement in the website and the availability of, board packet, board agenda, meeting minutes, the budgets, fiscal reports, all that stuff. And so I think your solution is simple and good. And, we had a lot of company on that list I saw amongst the Placer County agencies that were non-compliant. So I'm glad it's just a simple thing like this, and I think continuing to utilize our website to be as transparent as possible in our activities is great. So that's just one small step, but it was, I guess, an important one as far as the grand jury was concerned. But I'm good with that.
Lane?
Can I just respond to Director Treson? And just to clarify, I feel strongly on this. The agency was not non-compliant. You were in compliance with the Brown Act. The grand jury, in my view, and I've been doing work with the Brown Act for decades, simply didn't read the statute right. They wanted a one-click that takes you to a separate web hosting site. You guys don't use a web hosting site for your agendas. You keep it in your own web page, which you perfectly can do. So I think the grand jury way misread that. I just wanted to make that statement. What staff did, I think, was the prudent thing. Okay, fine, it's on the homepage. It's one click away instead of 2 clicks away.
Yeah.
But I just want to make it clear that in my view, you were not out of compliance with the Brown Act.
Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
We also have it
Lane?
highlighted the way it was originally. So at board meetings, board agenda is where it is originally, is where Dave is talking about.
Yeah. Lane?
No comment?
David?
Nice going. I think that's a,
Easy fix.
an easy fix to a could have been a complicated problem.
Okay, so as far as for board action, we're recommending approval of the Placer County Grand Jury Report, and we are in compliance. So Is there any board action other than?
Need a motion?
Need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Smeltzer. No further public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Management, what's up, Mike?
Good morning, Board of Directors, President Cox. For the July operations report on August 18th, for operations, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month, except for one violation in dissolved oxygen concentration, as noted below. On 7/19/2021, the final effluent DO for the data grab sample was 0.2 milligrams per liter, which is below the required 0.5 milligrams per liter. During normal operations, this is just a brief explanation. I'll take questions from the board after. During normal operations, the effluent DO is increased through process transfers between the BNR process and the multipurpose pump station through the ballast ponds. On 7/19/21, the typical BNR process was temporarily suspended and therefore did not follow the flow transfer to the ballast ponds, in turn not increasing the DO. Under normal circumstances, a DO probe is monitored to allow staff to make further changes to ensure the effluent DO is above the required 0.5 milligrams per liter. During this incident, the DO probe was reading 1.2 milligrams per liter and later determined to be incorrectly reading the DO value. If the DO probe was accurately reading the DO and indicated a lower value, staff would have utilized chlorine to the final effluent filtration process, thus increasing the DO. As corrective actions, moving forward, the agency has and/or will implement the following. We replaced the existing DO probe with a newer model, which is monitored daily and cleaned on a regular basis. Utilize recirculation pumping within the ballast ponds to increase DO when their flows are restricted. It should be noted that once a violation was determined, the agency replaced the faulty DO probe, restored flows to the ballast ponds, and applied additional chlorine. Another DO sample was taken and found to be 2.3 milligrams per liter, which would be above the 0.5. For the operations, actually I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions on that specific item?
That was within the plant, not outside the plant, correct?
This was a effluent violation.
Okay.
Prior to being discharged.
Prior to being discharged, nothing showed up. Well 31, clean.
Yeah. This is a requirement for our final effluent, not well 31.
Okay, good. Well, when you say all wastewater discharge requirements, I'm assuming it's to. No, it's not.
No, this
okay.
Per our WDR, that
Okay.
we are not to put any water below 0.5 milligrams per liter DO
Okay.
to the effluent disposal fields.
Okay.
We're supposed to maintain above the 0.5.
Okay.
So point of discharge, depending on the constituent, we've had the pH ones where the compliance point is the well, but a lot of the constituents
We
are
still
measured
have-
at the end of the pipe before it goes into the ground and gets commingled with groundwater.
As of our 2002 WDR requirements, that's.
And like the day before, so it was a daily grab sample, it was just that one day, and the meter was messed up.
And it was, that one daily grab for a short period of time during some operational.
Is there any,
changes.
what is the importance of maintaining some dissolved oxygen in the effluent before you go into the subsurface system?
That's what they said in the WDR back when they made the determination of what we would maintain for oxygen going out of the plant. So
You're not aware of some
I'm
negative
not aware
impact
of
of a
negative
temporary
over
reduction?
a long period of
Understand.
time, low dissolved oxygen under the ground could be an issue, but we always typically maintain over the 0.5. So.
Do we measure DO also down at the wells as well, or is that just?
I can't recall right. There's no requirements. It is, I believe it is measured, but there's no requirement for well rate.
So a report was made to Lahontan in
Yes.
regards to this violation?
Yes.
And any response?
In accordance to, we put it in our report, and it went to Lon, and there's been just that they've received it.
They acknowledged
the
receipt, and there was no comment?
No, not at this time.
We also provide a phone call too, right, Michael? It's not just the
Yeah.
so.
We also talked to Lon and told them what happened. We told them what the corrective actions were and what happened during the process upset, and then we moved on from there. So.
Okay. Lane, any comment? No. David? Okay.
So I'll go ahead and finish then. Operations, overall the plant performed well through the month, excluding the violation and minor digester foaming. Beginning on August 7th, wastewater treatment plant operators began processing weekend laboratory compliance samples. Continue to work in partnership with maintenance and engineering departments on plant improvement projects. Well 31 pH read 6.6 to 6.7 for the month. Operations continues to add caustic to the final effluent to maintain a 7.0 pH on the final effluent. Operations work orders, 6 were completed and 4 are pending for the laboratory. Staff performed necessary laboratory testing per WER requirements and operational needs for the month. Scheduling a consultant to perform a third-party assessment for T&I compliance. Beginning August 9th, lab staff transitioned to a weekday schedule in accordance with the handbook. The lab passed all required annual proficiency testing as required for ELAP accreditation. Staff continue to train remaining operators for weekend testing and will be completing DOCs. Laboratory director continues to assess the lab testing and evaluate administrative and analytical laboratory SOP needs. For clarification, corrective actions in the lab are an internal mechanism for continual improvement. I'm just explaining that the laboratory corrective actions, which we added in at the last month, just wanted to give a little bit of clarification what that was for. And again, this is an internal mechanism for continual improvement.
Are we talking about the SOPs?
We're actually talking about the laboratory corrective actions. So completed this month was 2, and there's still 4 pending, and there was no new corrective actions for the month of July. And with that, I'll take any other questions.
Yeah, Mike, since that we have, we're back in person, I'd like to meet the lab director. Maybe next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is he's off today. So,
yeah. Okay.
But
I just thought that would be good for the board to.
We feel like if he was here, we were definitely
No
introduced. We only met him through Zoom so far.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a possibility that he could have a place here at our monthly board meeting, or do you think that's not necessary?
I think if you would like him to have input and on a monthly basis, we can have him attend.
Well, the lab function is usually a topic here at the monthly board meeting. I think it would be appropriate to have our lab director present to answer any questions or comments.
It shall be done.
Well, I think it's good to I want to know who he is. But if there is issues, let's go one step at a time. Let's bring him in. Let's talk to him. And if we have issues regarding the lab on the agenda, definitely we would like him to be present.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, if it's okay, proceed like we do with like Vicky. They'll attend for their appropriate section.
Yeah.
So when this time comes, he can attend. I don't know if we have room on the table for him. We'll have him sit in the audience, and then as this time comes up, he can address the podium, address the board. So we'll definitely do that.
Yeah, because we did. When we're doing remote, he was on there.
He was on there,
which was good. So it's always better now that we can meet him in person to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one more question for Mike on his operational report. It's great. Usually there's a huge gap between the dash line that represents our effluent limit and where we're actually at. I just, as I was flipping through this, saw that on the monthly average daily chemical oxygen demand, it seems like in July it always goes up, and this year we're really close to that limit. I just thought maybe you could explain why do we see a spike in our effluent chemical oxygen demand in July, and is there anything to be concerned about there with our proximity? It's just Gary.
Are you talking about the
The
loading
day
or
rate,
for the
yeah.
final? For the final, for the.
Yeah, it's page
yeah.
366.
So,
there.
as mentioned in here, we had some digester foaming, and we are, again, working with maintenance and engineering on some projects in the plant. So, in order to get alkalinated BNR, we were using some of the secondary flow from the new side, go over to the old side, and we have to use an emergency bypass line to facilitate that flow back over. And during that digester foaming, that foam actually has to travel down that emergency bypass line to get out to the herb to come back to the head of the plant. So it was going through chemical treatment, but some of that COD was carrying through BNR and out to the effluent. We still maintained underneath our requirement, but that's why it was elevated for the month, was that digester foam.
You went way over my head there with that explanation, but
so the short answer was that digester foam.
And does that happen typically in July? Because it looks like you follow those charts every month, every year. We see that. Is that a temperature-related kind of event in July?
COD, no. COD is strength of the wastewater, so it's
Right.
chemical oxygen demand, and it's
But
it's our highest loading time of the year, and
Okay.
it's where we struggle the most to reduce that. So.
But yeah, I mean, I don't see it in the highest loading period, but you never see it in December, around the holidays and Christmas or anything. Is that because of the cold temperature related?
Well, BNR will uptake a little bit more of that
Okay.
COD
That takes
during the
it.
winter. Than,
Okay.
we use methanol as a COD constituent, but it can.
I just look
consume
at
more
the
of
highest
that.
loading area. Christmas would be a high loading area, but temperature being affected less. All right, thank you.
No other questions for me?
Richard?
Good morning again, Board of Directors. So maintenance for July continued to work with operations and engineering on the headworks upgrade project and the plant staining and coating project on the stripper and the secondary clarifier. I want to highlight, while it's something that's coming up this weekend, is our work on defensible space, just in light of all the fires that we're experiencing throughout the state. We'll have our contractor on site starting Friday and working through the weekend to provide defensible space for the facility. That'll probably carry into next week as well. So we've been working closely with Truckee Fire to watch red flag warnings and those type of things to do it safely. Continue to reorganize the IT office, the relocation of IT to our office area down in maintenance. We continue to work on the shop reorganization there and shuffling the shops around. We continue to work on that in between other jobs. Done some work to upgrade the chlorine alarm signals going into SCADA. Continue some in-house CDL training, moving on to our last individual. Some lighting and ventilation upgrades to the pipe gallery as part of the safety suggestion. This provides a visual for operators or maintenance staff that are going to enter the gallery, which we don't do very often. As Michael mentioned, due to some of the foaming issues, we've cleaned the digester flame arresters. We had inflatable plug for the Edwards project. Dropping down to the work orders. 17 were completed for mechanical, 10 for fleet, 38 for IT, 38 for E&I, and 10 for IT. Got a little bit of a backlog in mechanical. This time of year is a busy time of year for us to do PM, so you can see 151 there. Same with fleet PMs coming up. And then want to highlight on the IT side, last month I mentioned we had about 270 open work orders. IT staff did a great job of going through and cleaning those up. Down to 31 actual open work orders with others. It just dangled out there. They were actually completed or were no longer relevant. So just some cleanup work on our end to give a more accurate number for the report. Any questions?
No questions?
No.
What's up, Jay?
Hello again. In the month of July, we're in the thick of it right now with construction projects. We have the headworks project ongoing, plant painting, coating improvement project, asphalt ceiling project, digital scanning project is ramping up. And then we're also starting to work on our 2022 projects, like doing some pre-design activities. So yeah, the list of activities that we've been working on there in July. I'm happy to take any questions, comments anybody may have.
Any questions for Jay?
So just all in all, the headworks, that's a big project, you know, how's that going smoothly?
Yeah, it's going smoothly, but I'd caveat and say that it's slow because of manufacturing delays. The materials are hard to get. And, you know, they're like the major items. You know, the screens are going to be arriving later than they had hoped.
Is that going to cost the district, the agency money, or how does that?
We hope not. We're, keeping an eye on
it's all within their bid, I hope.
What everybody's convenient excuse seems to be these days is COVID when it comes to materials not arriving, factory delays. We're hoping that things will come sooner than they are expected and they can, install, but they're being held up by materials.
Is there major concerns, just weather, the weather we have here of winter arriving and that being a...
We can, so fortunately, they are, a lot of the outdoor work, so to speak, has been completed or nearing complete. And they're getting the facility, especially the headworks building, to a point where, it's mostly going to be buttoned up, for, so if any adverse weather did come, it wouldn't have a big impact on them. So it's less of a concern on weather. It's more concern on when are we going to get the big loads into headworks. So we are pressuring to get done, on schedule, but at the same time, on some of the factory orders, it's like pushing a road for them. So we'll see what occurs here.
When you have the 2020 digital scanning and sewer line project, are you reviewing the 2020 is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so what occurred there is we got the original deliverable from the contractor in May, April, May timeframe, and reviewed it and found a number of problems with that deliverable, and we had to kick that back to the contractor for addressing. And they tell us that it's in the mail now and we're going to get it on Friday. At this point, we believe them because we've seen enough chatter in the last few weeks. But what that is it's an ongoing, why that's on this list, it's an ongoing pestering of our contractor. We need this, where are you? Are you talking about they have sections that are not clear as far as the scanning and you're requesting it to be, or do we have a problem within the line that is requiring you guys to flush it and then go back in there?
So two things. One is that I think we talked about this either last or prior meeting, where we have a section that they were not able to scan because they had their equipment stopped.
Okay.
And whereas the prior contractor had no problem getting through that area. Okay. And so some questions came up on cleaning, and Richard has lined up ProPipe to do a cleaning of that section. So with respect to this section they were not able to get last year, we're going to be able to get this year, this year's contract. But the errors I'm talking about doesn't have to do with line defects or problems that we need to lose sleep over here. What it is that they did not use the same software stitching program that puts everything together like our old contractor did, and so they ran into a bunch of roadblocks with respect to coding, software coding, and most of the segments scan fine, or the software is works fine, we can see what's going on. These other ones are glitchy, and it's those glitchy ones that they're fixing.
Okay, well, I mean, how many work orders did this generate? This on the 2020 compared. I mean, are you seeing very much work orders?
So we basically how that works is we document the areas where there's debris.
Mostly
on
it's
the line,
flushing and stuff.
Flushing,
like that.
and we give that list to maintenance.
Okay.
And Richard can update on that in a second. But with respect to,
Defects.
other defects where we need to go in and repair something or excavate something, we haven't had anything come up on that. But do you want to address the cleaning aspect of it?
Yeah, and I think it was somewhat discussed too when we did budget. There was a large dollar amount in there for some of the sections on the parallel line. As when it was digitally scanned, there's several areas with gravel and chunks of asphalt in there. Nothing to be concerned with if we had to put flow through it, but we need to get it out. It's been there for a while, so we're working on that, and you'll be seeing.
I just look at it, because you do that, you produce the work orders a lot. If there's anything in there, you're going to hopefully do it during the low flow periods in the fall, I would assume. So just making sure that that's done. We got a clean line, and we can, going into the winter period, when the flows start going again, and that sort of thing,
Sure.
that we're able to handle it. So, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else for Jay?
Just
Go ahead.
Maybe, Lou, I'm stealing a little bit of your thunder. It's not in Jay's report, but it's in yours that there's a candidate, the assistant associate engineer is going to commence work at the end of August, so that's coming up. I just maybe get an update from either of you guys on that. Hiring is really challenging right now, so I'm just curious how that went. And is it a local person or?
Yeah, so he's from Reno Sparks.
Okay.
And he's starting on Monday.
Okay.
He was very impressive in our review interview process. So we made an offer. He right away, and we're looking forward to it.
That's good. So I guess we'll get a meeting now.
Yeah, I think we'll have probably like a
provided he's not on vacation already.
Meet and greet next month.
Sure. Yeah, I think you'll announce the new employee. We'll have him provide a brief background.
Okay, anything else, Jay?
Not unless you have anything.
No. What about you, LaRue?
We have Crystal for the admin.
Oh.
And then I'll go after you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I don't have much to report anyways. The biggest thing going on in the accounting department right now is audit. We are working on pre-audit requests from the auditor. We have interim field dates in September, and then final field dates in October. They'll be coming on premises to do their audit. And then in the billing customer service department, we've got the regular and delinquent tax billing rules are done, completed, and along with several inspections. And that's all I have to report, other than the normal day-to-day activities.
Crystal, I got a question for you. Within the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a couple of issues with customers. One guy, what was it? How many years he didn't? 20 years. That one. I mean, are you seeing everything caught up as far as the billing end of it? And
I would have to. I believe that we're getting there. I'm still delving into that and learning that aspect.
Okay.
I did go on the inspections with Celeste, and I know that she's been doing a lot of inspections. And I believe that we are working hard to get that caught up. If it's not already caught up, we might be able to add more to that.
Yeah, a lot of that fixed itself. We went to the tax roll billing.
Right.
But the ones that we can't, we did cut down on that considerably, because once that happened, we went through big vetting to make sure we were addressing these that weren't being addressed in the past years.
Right.
So as far as I understand it, you may have a little that are late here and there, but to the degree of not billing anybody for multiple years, we're not experiencing that at all.
They were all caught up when we went to tax roll. Anything now is from previous year.
Okay, well, and two, on the tax rolls, is commercial on there now or not?
There are many on the
There are
tax roll.
many on there. There's some that are not, correct, that have
Yes.
requested not to be?
That is correct. Not that they requested
Okay.
not to be.
You haven't got there yet.
No, there are some that are.
Okay.
It's just that some that are difficult to do so because of the way that the suites are broken out,
Okay.
but they are transitioning.
Okay. When's that transition going to be complete with our
They're just
commercial?
pending inspections.
Okay, good.
Well,
Thanks.
there are some that are not qualified, I mean, that are not allowed, or that don't go on the tax roll. So, that won't ever be on the tax roll. Governments, I believe.
Well, government should,
Yeah.
you know. Okay.
That's true.
All right. Thank you.
What's up, Maru?
All right, I just want to add a couple.
Will we have comment on department reports?
After-
Oh, go ahead.
Department reports are always forward to the agenda. Am I
It's-
missing something?
It's usually after the.
So the administrative is now rolled in with,
I'm sorry?
well, you have on your list 4 reports, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm trying to just follow your agenda. I know during Zoom, we didn't have comment until after the 4 reports that are listed. But there's actually 5. Is that accurate?
Let's see.
Art LaRue is your report, part of Crystal's report?
It has been. Yeah.
Okay, so
Usually
that's where I
after-
got off. I can wait. It's fine. I just was counting.
Yeah, just to be clear, what was it, receiving public comment after
The general manager.
the management team
Yeah,
report
yeah.
highlight that? We could do it individually or maintain the
Well,
same.
I think that it'd be appropriate to wait until all the departments
Yeah,
have made
yeah,
their
and that's fine with me. I
comments.
just was unclear because there's only 4 listed on the item and there's actually 5 reports.
Gotcha.
In my method of counting.
So with the general manager's report, yeah, we've already discussed the assistant engineer position. We are in the interview phase for the maintenance mechanic and wastewater treatment plant operator, OITU 1, 2, and 3. We've kind of opened that up. Before, we've historically kind of recruited at a lower level. We're now opening that up to where we have more experienced staff coming in. The agency is going to take those into consideration as well.
How many positions are you recruiting for?
For the maintenance mechanic is 1, and for the operators, total 2 at this point. Yeah. Okay. We do have a change order too that's attached there, and I wanted to address the picture that's in here. If you can look at the screens there. This is the first time I've encountered this in Truckee. Those are motorcycle tracks from burnouts. That's the term I'm going to apply it here. It occurred a few months back. It kind of went away, and then it just came back again. At the same time, we also saw some graffiti on the rock. It's also on the back side of the rock. I just included the front side. We had staff go out there and cover it, and it's kind of amazing. You guys probably never even noticed it when you walked by. I've never seen this. They went through to remove the paint. It didn't all come off, so what they kind of did was they painted over the rock with a natural color. And if you're not looking for it or you're not aware of it, you'll never even know anything happened to that rock. So we are monitoring it. I don't think we need to take any extreme steps this time. If this just happens to occur again, then we'll start looking at options. There was also a little bit of graffiti down by TSD, nothing to this magnitude, like a rock that had like a target drawn on it or something like that, so we took care of that.
Are you saying this was done last month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you filed a report with Truckee PD?
No, we kind of had a little internal discussion. We'll just look at it now. We kind of were chalking up to maybe a couple of board individuals just doing this on our street. And if it does occur again, then we'll file a report. We've discussed maybe getting trail cams or to grasp something. It's just I've never encountered this since I've been here, and I've talked to other staff, and they've never seen this either. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention on that one.
I never accounted for it at our place. I have it, and we had to go through the graffiti that's taking place.
You too? Wow.
Yeah, it's just they nailed Safeway, and you know.
Oh, did they really?
I think it's just a matter of. I want to say, I mean, this is done in July, but I think the kids had a lot of free time.
A lot of free time.
So we occasionally get our lift stations tagged, and we generally file a report with the PD just so that they're aware and keep their eyes open. So I encourage you to do that too. I don't know how often they come down. Jorger on their patrols, but just if they're aware that there's problems out here, that's just that much more likely for them to, put a stop to it, or they put it into their routine cycle more often. So I think that's a shame.
Yeah, it's disappointing. So you guys have been encountering it. It just took us by surprise because we've never really had that here yet.
No, but I'm with Blake. You make a police report, so they're notified. We put cameras up. We haven't had an incident since.
Yeah, so we haven't had it since we cleaned it up. We'll keep you guys posted as things come up. I'm assuming once it gets cold, they probably won't be out doing this as much, but who knows? But we'll keep you posted. Additionally, I wanted to let you be aware that our special labor legal counsel, Wiley Price Radulovich, has joined their efforts, their service with Alashire and Windar, another legal team. So we will still maintain their services. Fortunately, all their staff, the Wiley Price Radulovich that we've been accustomed with, moved over and transitioned with this new company, and we have not lost any of that experience and knowledge because we'll still continue to work with them and work with the same individuals we've been working with historically. Wanted to thank the chemists, the operators, and lab director for finally getting the weekend testing down for the operators now. So now we have staff that can enjoy their weekends. So now to their Monday through Friday. And again, thanks to Mark Messerschmidt and Casey Sarate for doing the graffiti removal. I was just in awe that they can paint a rock to cover this up. I've never encountered that. With that, I have nothing else to add. If there's any questions, I can address those.
I got a question, and this is for council. In regards to Joker Drive out here, the drag strip that's turned into, it appears to me like a high-speed recreational area. Do we have any liability out there? That used to be our road. We maintained it. We had control over who used it and how it was used and so on and so forth.
It's a complicated question, Dale, and the answer is potentially. As I recall, it's been a long time since I looked at this issue. Jurger Road coming down the hill is a town of Truckee Road until some point, maybe near the TSD plant.
That's what I thought.
And at some point it becomes a private road that is jointly owned, operated, maintained by you guys and Tykert, and I think the school district shares in that maintenance agreement. So you have a complicated question of ownership and maintenance responsibility, and if somebody, for example, if the road gets in such bad disrepair that it becomes a dangerous condition and there's a car accident attributable to a condition of the road, then yeah, somebody may have some responsibility, but it would really depend on the facts and these various agreements that I haven't looked at in a while on maintenance responsibility.
I think it might be something that we might want to address, only because, as you can see from the picture, I think that all of the rubber that I see on this road comes after the school district. There's kind of a fine line there, and all of a sudden it just turns out, it just turns into a psychedelic road map of black rubber. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when somebody comes off the road and hits a boulder, hits a tree or whatever, and where do we lie in in liability of this situation? And I'd like to minimize any responsibility from the agency of what goes on there. There's no way that we can police it outside of maybe putting cameras or something there, but I can foresee that this has all started this summer, and it's gotten progressively worse to the point where it's not just one person doing this. This is turned into a recreational area, and I'm concerned about our liability.
Okay, I will follow up with LaRue on that, and the most important thing is to make sure that whoever is responsible for maintaining, repairing, adding down, fresh asphalt, that kind of stuff is doing the job and it's being done timely, properly, and I will update LaRue on those requirements. And of
coordinate, it would probably require some coordination with your road maintenance partners.
Okay. I don't think the maintenance is an issue. I just think that what's happening there is a situation that has some high level of liability, and I just want to make sure we're covered and we don't have any responsibility there. Blake, have you got any comment?
No, not beyond what you said.
Do you see what's going on there?
I've noticed the upper one, the motorcycle patching burnout. Not on Jorger, because I haven't been down this way very recently, but I've noticed it in other spots. It's a new thing, I think, that's happening that I never noticed in years past. You kind of wonder, how did they do that, you know? But I agree with you, Dale. I don't want to. I'm hard pressed to see how we become liable. But if there is any opportunity for that, and there's some proactive steps we can take, because we should take those steps.
Yeah, again, just to be clear, the liability potential attaches to the condition of the road. And if somebody on a motorcycle wipes out and he or she's able to demonstrate that, well, my wipeout was because you guys aren't taking care of your road, and it's hypothetical and unlikely, but that's where the risk lies. If a motorcyclist is doing something like this nonsense, then the risk of liability is pretty slim.
That would go to cleaning the road as well, right?
Yeah.
If there's sand on the road and you go, So how does all that get done?
Well, and on this particular road stretch, there's a detailed contract that spells it all out. It's in my file. I just haven't looked at it in years, so I honestly don't recall where the responsibilities lie. But you and Tykert in the past have evaluated this issue and and it's just important that the parties are following that contract and doing the right maintenance. I mean, the road looks fine to me driving in; it's in good shape, and yeah.
We'll look into it and report back.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public on any of the department presentations?
Yeah, Sarah Coolidge, Paul Vista. I am going to comment on the operations report, which is on page 356. And I just have some questions about clarity here, and in part I want to preface it with I do a lot of work with reading and language and writing, and as a member of a public reading this report and knowing some of the history about what I've been learning about pH and coliform recently, I have some questions about what I read here, and I think others might as well. And my number one question, Blake's question, was the same. Is why do we monitor dissolved oxygen? What are the potential implications of having it be off? What does that mean for the environment? Why does it even matter? And I would, if I were a member of the board, these are the questions that I would be asking and wanting to know. And I hope that maybe somehow I will still get to know. The second one is when we talk about how the BNR process was temporarily suspended, I want to know why. Is this something that we do frequently? What makes it get temporarily suspended? It sounds like it does happen on occasion for some reason. My third question is that during this incident, the DO probe was reading 1.2 milligrams per liter and later determined, and my question is, what happened later? How was that suddenly determined later that it was incorrectly reading it? And then my last question is, if the DO probe was accurately reading, but it wasn't, so why wasn't it? Because it was broken? Or because it wasn't used regularly and not monitored or cleaned regularly, because these are all things that are now going to start to happen? Because all of that says to me that there is a potential of somehow this thing is not used very often, we don't monitor it very often, we don't clean it very often, we don't have a system for doing any of that. And that is the kind of attention that you have received here repeatedly and that you don't want to receive. You don't want people to question things like that. So in the preparation of a report like this, if you anticipate that someone might say, well, why, like I'm saying, for 4 different instances, someone else will say that too. And often when people do that, they have a perception that something is being concealed. So I would appreciate it if I could get answers to those, but these are the kinds of questions that I would ask if I was sitting in your position and I would want answers to. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to address any of that, Mike?
You want me to address that?
Well, she just
Sure.
asked
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah.
So, can you go back over that one, writing down all the questions?
Yeah, I got them. The first one was the significance of the DO. Second was the DNR suspension. Third was the reading of 1.2. And then why wasn't it reading correctly? So I think we already addressed the first one, the DO significance. You were going to look into for that. As it comes to the BNR process, was temporarily suspended. So we can elaborate on the frequency that occurs.
So, during normal operations of the BNR system, we do backwashes on the cells. And when it does a backwash, the flow is temporarily suspended through the system because it uses its own water, because it's a gravity system, to do the backwash. So you have no aeration over the final aeration, well, over the final weir of the D-night cells going over to the ballast pond, which generates DO, and that's what that temporary suspension of the BNR process was. It was a BNR backwash.
And it happens every day, once
It
a year?
happens daily. But, to elaborate, it depends on what we're doing with the BPs. If we're under normal BP structure where we're not cleaning normal flows, we have other ladders in the process that also aerate the water. But during this cleaning process, which was we were cleaning the BFE pond, there's no ladder between that final effluent for the DO, or that final effluent from BNR going into the MPPS wet well, multi-purpose pump station wet well. So when that temporary suspension happened, we were pulling water only out of BP 26, which had not been aerated for a period of time because of the cleaning of the ponds.
And when this occurs daily for the backwashes, this is not uncommon. We are aware of it. Staff is aware of it.
Yes.
And then at that point, so we're going to try to elaborate. They go to the DO meter and use that as a monitoring tool, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next point was that stated that it was reading at a 1.2, and then later determined to be incorrectly reading the DO value. So when staff was there, they're reading at a 1.2. How was it determined? I hope I'm getting to the question. How was it determined that it was not reading incorrectly? What was the incident that?
So we do a daily check on the DO probe in the morning when we do our grab for our compliance point for DO. We also look at the final effluent DO probe reading, and we write that down. The lab staff or operations staff go in and read the DO on the lab probe inside the lab to certify the constituents. When they did that, the reading they got in the lab was a 0.23, whereas the continuous monitoring DO probe, we have a continuously monitoring DO probe on the effluent line, was reading a 1.2. So it just wouldn't go below the 1.2 milligrams per liter, which it had. So the operator didn't know to make any kind of a change to the flows or chlorination to the filters to try to increase the final effluent DO for a short period of time.
So there's actually two measuring devices for DO.
There's multiple measuring devices
and
for
a
DO
different
throughout
one
the plant,
was
but there's a
used.
final effluent continuous monitoring DO probe that was reading at 1.2, but when the grab was taken for the same sample, it was a 0.23 or a 0.2.
So that's where the confusion is. There's more than one DO probe, but in the actual paragraph, there's no way to know that.
But the other DO probe is not a continuous monitoring. It was,
Okay.
again, it's a lab DO probe that's checked daily for QC, and that's what we report our daily DO from, because our daily DO in the WDR is at grabs.
Yeah, so just elaborate. It's not like when this process happens, staff isn't not paying attention. They're aware of these situations. They're aware of the repercussions of doing such backwash, and they're monitoring. And that DO failed without anybody's knowledge. they don't know, right?
Yeah, and that's
Right,
the entire thing that was not clear from reading this.
Okay.
It sounded like the DO probe just wasn't working, and not that there was another DO probe, continual, whatever it's called,
Yeah, but-
reading that you can check against, which is what I'm hearing now.
Well, so the continuous monitoring DO probe was the one that was not reading correctly, which is in the effluent. It continuously monitors the DO of the final effluent before it goes out to disposal fields. That was the one that was reading incorrectly. The lab DO probe, which is in the certified lab, read a 0.23, whereas the continuous reading effluent was a 1.2. As soon as it was reported to us, we addressed that, and it had only been occurring for a number of, a very short period of time. So it's not like the water for the whole day or the day before, for a 24-hour period. It was for a very short period of time that this occurred.
Well, I think we're talking about two things. You're suggesting that there are two probes that do the monitoring. I think the clarification is there actually is one probe. It's a live read. The second monitoring component was in the laboratory, which is a grab sample. So they don't occur at the same time as one's continually going.
Mm-hmm.
The impression I got from your point was that there's two, that if we should be checking two monitors or two probes continuously.
Almost. I mean, what I'm hearing now is that you're measuring the oxygen, dissolved oxygen, at least two ways, maybe more, because you said we're measuring it lots of different ways. But when I read the paragraph, I thought there was one piece of equipment
Understood. Okay.
that was not working, and we somehow determined later that it wasn't. And I was curious as to how did we determine that later, since it's not clear here. And these are the kinds of questions that I think are, you want to avoid.
Sure.
Which is why I'm pointing them out. The clarity is not quite there as to how did this all sort of work itself out. And it's language.
Right.
And it's all we've got when it comes to communicating what's happening. And so it's just something that I really noticed. I came out of it going, I don't understand what happened here. And if I don't understand what happened here, I know it's reasonable to believe that other people won't understand it. And that's why I brought it up. And now I know more, and thank you.
Understood.
Thank you for your questions.
And I think this was the last one was why wasn't it reading correctly? I think that was the last question. So did we perform, what sort of maintenance or monitoring did we perform on that DO program?
At the time, we do a daily check, which I told you we do the grab sample, and it's checked against the continuous monitoring probe. And the INE or the E&I group also air-cal that DO probe on a regular basis, which I believe is either once or twice a week. Was it twice a week?
Yeah.
It's air-cal. So, yeah. Does that clarify it, or do you have anything else that you?
It was partly clarified from the first part, knowing that there's more than one way that you're actually measuring this oxygen.
I think what it is finding
when I go back, when I say we measure oxygen in a lot of different places of the plant, it's not for the final, but we have oxygen monitoring in our activated sludge systems. We have oxygen monitoring in our BNR system because we're oxidizing ammonia. So when I say we have a lot of different places that we monitor DO, that's what I'm referring to. But we have the one place on the effluent and then the data graph.
I think it's a matter of finding the fine balance of providing too much detail to where it can be quite confusing, or not enough to where it's also quite confusing. So I appreciate the feedback. It sounds like, because when I read it, it seemed satisfactory to me, but I'm in it all day, every day, so it's easy for me to comprehend. So we just need to take a step back before these are published and see if it's needs any additional information, Michael. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Pippin. Yeah, that'd be great, because that way we get you on the audio.
Gets me to stand up a little bit too. Okay, so I've been writing a few notes myself on this. So, this is certainly related to the violation, right? And from my perspective, I guess that I would say that a water treatment plant has two primary functions as a bunch, but right, it's to reduce BOD or COD, it's COD for you guys, and to disinfect the water, right? And then you reduce the BOD to get the DO up, right? And you need the DO up because when it goes into the Truckee River, which is cold, that there's a higher concentration of oxygen, and that's what trout especially, but generally there's a whole group of animals that survive better in high oxygen content, colder water, right? That's why warm water has bass and cold water has trout, roughly speaking. So, as I read this is the second time in the last 3 months where a random grab sample has found an issue, right? So you pull a sample once a day, and then you realize that there's some systemic problem, and they both had to do with maintenance, right? The last one had to do with this recirculation, and that the chlorinator wasn't working for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever the time frame was, and you had an issue here. So those, that kind of thing really concerns me, and I start to wonder about if these randomly got caught by a one-time-a-day grab sample, how many times have they not been caught because there wasn't that grab sample? So that's like, it doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me. I also have some concerns about, this probe was found to be failing. Why this time? What probe is going to be failing next time, right? Like, how do you prevent these things from happening? This isn't something that, these aren't just two random occurrences. It seems to keep on going. And, honestly, like, I started commenting here about a year ago at your meeting, and I assumed that I would run out of things to comment on. That, right, you wouldn't have violations, you'd run a tight ship, that would be the end of that. But instead, here I am still. And I would say that one of the major issues, as I see it, is personnel, right? Do you have the personnel? Do you have the experience? Do you have the people that are aware of this stuff and are paying attention to it and know how it should be and can recognize the problem before it's a problem? And of course, I assume you know that. I assume that answer is no, and it has to do with that ridiculous turnover rate. I do have to just it's a small thing, but when the maintenance report says everything ran fine except for this violation and foaming, it kind of reminds me of the saying, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? So that was kind of a bigger deal than those two violations. That violation this time and the high number, the last time I understand it, as it currently sits, the Lahontan is considering that a violation, but it still was a grab sample that was above the limit, and it did get averaged out, but it's sort of a weird way to do statistics. And I would just encourage these, to proactively look at ways to prevent these kind of HR and violation issues moving forward.
Thank you. Moving along on the agenda, board comments. Go ahead, Blake.
One, I'm going to pair it with what you said about the PDFs. Rochelle, maybe you and I can work together. Since I review these electronically, and I do struggle sometimes with navigating and doing some editing, so maybe we can perhaps do some improvements to the packet PDF. We do keep talking about the UV, and we sort of discuss it. So I don't know that we can get it on the agenda to see where the next step would be, but actually take some formal action, as opposed to just sort of a anecdotal discussion as we talk about chlorine or the master plan, if that's what it takes, is something there. So I'd like to see us get something on the agenda to talk about, future disinfection, whether it's the plan Jay talked about, a alternatives analysis, or some other pathway. But let's get that ball rolling. If
I can get clarification, the master plan is getting close to being wrapped up, and that addresses that. Do you want to have an independent discussion of that?
Well, let's get it addressed, and then let us decide where we go with that when we get the master plan.
Yeah. So there's two things.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, I'm confused. Jay indicated that the master plan is not really going to provide us with a alternatives analysis. So are we going to make a decision point whether we want your recommended path would be get the master plan, and that'll engender whether or not we want to do an alternatives analysis?
It should be, if I can step in here, because the master plan for the projects where, like a major project like that, it has the year before a study to determine, okay, which direction we're going to go here. So I think some of this will flesh out in the authorization of the master plan, and when we review that. That might be the way, the vehicle you're looking for.
That's what I was thinking, that when that happens, then we bring that
Then you would-
back up at that time. I mean, disinfection and UV is what we brought up, whenever this issue with this chlorine comes up, what's the best solution?
Can we just, instead of doing it right here, maybe we just put something on there, future disinfection, a discussion, a non-action item, our next board meeting, and we can clarify whether it comes before or after the master plan as opposed to doing it here, but at least we have it on the agenda to discuss and possibly direct you to come back and something else.
No problem.
And then the third one's a little bit of an oddball, with the potential power shutdowns that may happen, haven't happened yet, thankfully. We've got 700 of our customers in the TSD district that are served by private pump systems. And so when the power goes down, so does their pump system go down. And if they have to live there, they're going to need to get that pumped out. And so we were sort of brainstorming, we sent messages out to all those folks to alert them that when the power goes out at your house, you got to stop using water, or you got to, have a generator to run your pumps, which is not really practical in most of those 700 cases, or more likely either leave or get it pumped down by a septage pumper. And my understanding, and I may be wrong, is that septage haulers have to take their loads to Reno to dump, and I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity in that scenario, if this is something that, I'm kind of spinning a worst case scenario, but in a prolonged power outage and people needing a lot of septage pumping going on that they normally wouldn't, whether we would be able to open our doors to increase that cycle time for them to be able to get back out and pump other places down as opposed to filling up and having to go all the way to Reno and back.
Why would they have to do that?
Why would they have to go to Reno?
Yeah.
Well, that's and maybe I'm wrong. Can a private Alpine Septage, Reno Rendering, the guys who come and suck out septic tanks and a pump system or something like that, are they allowed here?
No.
So they go down to.
We have no ordinance for that.
Right. So it's just something that I wanted to pursue, specifically for our customers that have pump systems. I don't know how you would distinguish it versus somebody pumping out a septic tank. The septic tanks aren't going to typically need a rush during the power outage, but these pump systems will. So
You're talking about sewage ejectors.
Call it a sewage ejector. Yeah, it's a mini pump station specifically for that house that's on a downsloping lot to get back up to the street.
Right.
When the power goes down, that ain't working.
That's correct.
And they're going to be calling septage haulers, and the question is would that be something that we could do down here to accommodate them in that?
Go through that. There are concerns with doing such a thing. We can look into it and report back next month to see what some of the concerns might be, where we could or could not accommodate that. Yeah. As it also pertains to adding on to the power outage, we have emergency generators here, so that.
No, I know you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
In our TSD-owned pump stations, we've got 43 of them. Similarly, either have standby generators or we have portable generators to run them. But there's, like I said, 700 customers that have ejector pumps, little private pump systems, and most of them aren't on backup power nor wired to be run on a backup generator, portable backup generator.
Lane?
Being in fire season here, looking around at the plant, looks like we did some mastication as far as the plants here, but taking another look at it as far as making sure, that we have that defensible space up, and even possibly looking at sprinkling a couple of roofs that are combustible, as opposed to we got metal roofs on some of these. So do we not?
All of them are EPDM, so they're rubber. They're metal, but there's a rubber membrane on top.
Okay. Yeah.
And as far as we do have a contractor coming starting Friday. We'll be working through the next 3 to 5 days doing the remainder of the plant, as well as some good major work for Truckee Fire on some of the roads that are going out on our property, so they have access
Okay.
if needed.
We actually invited Cal Fire or Truckee Fire
Truckee Fire / Cal Fire.
to come in here and
Cal Fire
provide some
probably
recommendations.
busy right now.
Yeah, so when they came, they identified some concerns, potential, so, and we were just adhering to it.
Yeah, okay, that's my comment.
Okay, David, any comment?
Well, yeah, I want to congratulate the board and LaRue for signing up with Logically IT for their service. Our general manager at Alpine says it was a real good idea. He said there was something like, and I'm not even sure about the time frame, 1 day or 1 week, 190 incidents of
Cybersecurity.
yeah, I mean, you're going, wow, they're out there trying to get us, so this is a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you to the maintenance department as well, Monte.
Okay,
Bill, just, and you're probably gonna say it, but just, it's good to be back here with everybody, you know? Let's hope we can keep this going.
Yeah.
You guys like the U-shaped configuration?
that's a little bit to get used to, but it's all right.
Usually.
It's all new to me.
It's all new to you. Okay, if there's nothing else to be brought before this board on its August the 18th, 2021 meeting, no further comments from the public, no further comments from the board. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session,
I'll make
please.
that motion.
Been moved by Director Lewis,
Second.
seconded by Director Treason. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned. Let's have a motion to return to open session.
I'll make that.
It's been moved by Smeltzer, seconded by Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Back in open session. Counselor.
With respect to agenda item Roman numeral 9, number 1, in closed session, the board decided that the full board will handle the appeal hearing for the Barker termination appeal. Consequently, there will be no consideration of a resolution or motion to adopt a separate hearing officer.
Okay. So we can.
That was what was discussed in closed session.
And there's nothing else to report from closed session?
Okay. If there's nothing else to report to this board meeting of August the 18th, the year 2021, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Been moved by Lewis,
Second.
seconded by Treason. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So ordered.